The- Before we get into our committee meetings, the first thing that we're going to have, a customer, I think I'm still working, citizen comments. The first person that signed in is Richard Lanier. If you state your name and your address, and each person has 5 minutes to talk.
I am Richard Lanier Sr., Smithfield, Virginia, 19 years here, and I love this town. To the Vice Mayor and council members, good afternoon. I am coming to respond to a letter that was sent to me by Mrs. Tammy Carey, and it's in response to the letter that I sent to each of you concerning my opposition to the open B&P pond that will be located on the corner of Main Street. Now, I just came by there a few minutes ago. Water is standing, and water will be standing there for a while. The first item that I want to respond to is alternative one that was sent to me concerning an underground B&P pond. Well, I still believe that an underground B&P pond can be put there, even though the opposition says that the soil is sandy soil, or not enough sand in the soil, and the quality and quantity control regulating that water would be in jeopardy. Well, I would say to you, once they start moving soil around on that property, you can do whatever you want to do. You can, even though that's a lower area, I still think that an underground B&P pond would be best suited for that area. The next will be the cost. That seems to be the main objective for the developer, is the cost. How much is a life worth? How much? I am told that it will cost an additional $250,000 to $400,000. Well, for a project that size, for me, that's a lot of money. For a project that size, that's not a heck of a lot of money. The other thing would be that I'm most concerned about is safety. The safety of the citizens in that area, especially the children. They are our future. We need to protect them. However, no matter what the cost is, we cannot replace a life. The other one is that I suggested, if we're going to have a B&P pond, then it should be covered and used for parking. And that's done in a lot of localities all over this country. Pervious materials. The response was that this VDOT will not allow pervious materials for roadways. Well, I am not sure about that, but I can say this: for every parking lot, you can have pervious materials, and that would allow water to soak back into the soil and not have the need for larger and more B&P ponds. Safety. I am told that the developer is going to have an underground B&P pond at another location. And I'm wondering, where's that location going to be? Why are you going to have, not you, a B&P pond underground in that development at another location, but you cannot have a B&P pond at the corner of Main Street? If flooding should occur, you will block that area and block the entrance to, thank you, sir. you would block the entrance to the development there. Again, I thank you for listening to my opposition, and I remain steadfast that a B&P pond, an open one, should not be on the corner of Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier. Is this one? Tommy, is this Garing?
Yes.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Tommy Garing, 215 Cary Street. And right now, with it not having very much rain lately, my yard's draining right now. But if we had a heavy rain for any extended time, the water that is coming from Gray Street goes into the same drainage as from my yard and from the field where the barns and the parking lot's gonna be behind my house, and the BMP pond is gonna be behind my house. So, right now, that's not flooding, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I just wanna invite you all to sit on my porch between 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning during the week, or 4 to 6 in the afternoon, to see the traffic and how they like to go fast on that road. So I just wanted to open that up to the council, that I have a couple chairs on the front porch you can sit, and I just wanted to invite you. Thank you.
Do you have to be home?
No, but you can just pull down my driveway.
All right, thank you, Mr. Garing. And that time is 6 to 8 and 4 to 6?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The rush going from, the employees going to town, and people coming home from the shipyard, going up Mill Swamp Road, and people coming home in the afternoons.
All right, thank you. Landfoot Pritchett.
Ranford Pritchett, 5312 River Landing Trail, and yes, you said it just fine.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchett.
When I was in the baby making business and I had a son, I have 3 last names. My son was not going to be Junior. And on that note, where I signed up, I put my email address and phone number, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'm here to talk about the Grange just for a couple minutes. I'm opposed to it. Traffic, I don't think the farmer's market has a chance. I'm a retired architect. I've probably at some point in my career I had more experience in P3s than anybody else in the country. If I can help there and be a resource to you, I'm happy to try, okay? That's why I put my contact information on there. On the PUD, the P3, public-private partnership, there's a lot of hairs on that dog, and they stem, in my mind, from the fact that the registered voters in the town of Smithfield are opposed to this project. And yet it's going to use public funds to be able to make the project happen, and it just doesn't feel right. I hope you can get, if this thing moves forward, which I hope it doesn't, for a lot longer than I have 5 minutes to say, I just hope you don't use any tax dollars for it. The other thing I question is if this project is approved, I mean, there's 4 corners on that intersection. It sets a precedent, and is there anything to say that the other 3 corners couldn't do the same thing? If somebody comes in and says, let's do it 3 more times around here, and what that does. I try to tell my kids, if your community is doing something that you're not in favor of or don't think is good for the community and you don't speak up, you have only yourself to blame for the results. I'm speaking for my grandchildren here today, okay? I've been coming here since I was 1 year old. Unfortunately, that wasn't yesterday. And I hope that my grandchildren will enjoy this town the way it is. I've lived in London, Sydney, Dubai, Buenos Aires, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and other socialistic cities. And I just want to leave you with one comment that I hope you will remember. I guess it's next week when you finally vote on this. Small town charm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchett. Sandra Cleary.
I'm Sandra Cleary, and I live at 115 Institute Street. I'm at the corner of Grace Street and Institute Street. It's a very busy little intersection right there. I really wasn't prepared to speak, but I feel like I need to, because just like he said, if you don't say something, then it's almost like you don't care. And I can't tell you how much I care, because I care so much that I'll probably cry, but I'm going to try not to. My husband and I bought our house about 25 years ago. We have 2 boys. We bought that house. It's a fixer-upper for sure, built about 1880, and it needed a lot of work. We have sunk a couple of $100,000 into that house just restoring it. He's gone, he died, and it's me. I'm older, I'm handicapped, and I take care of my 4 grandchildren. It is so hard to get across the street sometimes. It is so hard to feel safe with my grandchildren riding their little scooters down the sidewalk. I was stopped by a police officer the other night, a couple weeks ago, for simply walking my dog at 9:15, and he stopped his car and he put the spotlight in my face. And I had a flashlight, and my kids were on their little scooters with their lights at the bottom. And I lost track of them for a few minutes, and they just kept going because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't have eyes in the back of their head. So I was asked, were those my children? And I said, no, they're my grandchildren. And that was pretty much it. That was the whole conversation for the stop. But that's not the problem. I would rather see police officers in my neighborhood. If they're concerned about children that are there, fine. But what I'm concerned the most about is this traffic. What is going to happen? I can barely walk across the street. I have neighbors that live across from me, the Kochs, and they're both handicapped. They're having a hard time. I'm retired from law enforcement. And I'm telling you, I have never seen anything like the traffic on Grace Street. People are rude. The other day, there was a little girl. I think her father works at Chili Hill. She was trying to cross across the street on Grace Street to cross over on Institute so she could get to her parents' restaurant. And I pulled my car out and kind of in the middle of Grace Street because I wanted to make sure she could get across safely, because people will go up behind you and they'll just go around your car, like backing out of your driveway. They will go around to the point where they're actually up on the curb to get around you because they don't want to slow down. Can you imagine, with the traffic and the way people are now, 5,500 more cars, how in the world is that going to impact us? It's going to ruin our old houses. It's going to ruin our way of life there, where you're just used to walking down the street and seeing your neighbors. Tourists aren't going to want to go down there because it's going to be noisy and loud, and I thought tourism was like a big deal here. Just like fixing up our old houses and people coming to see your old houses. You know, it's just, I just wanted to talk about the traffic. That's my biggest issue with the whole Grange and the whole idea about not having ways for traffic to go out onto 10. Because I really think, I've driven around so much and I see this center line that is on 258. I've seen it on 13 in Suffolk. I see it everywhere, these center lanes where you can pull into that center lane and you can make your left-hand turn without disrupting.
1 minute remaining.
Okay. But to me, I know VDOT says, hey, I don't even know what they say because I don't even know if they've gotten back with you guys. But to me, there are ways to protect our neighborhood from all this traffic, protect our children, protect the tourists, protect the older people just trying to get across the street. And find a way for these people that live in the Grange to get to Smithfield Foods if that's the main issue for having the Grange there. I originally heard that the Grange, they wanted walkability. Well, make our sidewalks nice. Give them the option of walking to work every day. I have no problem with people walking. But please I'm just begging everybody, please think twice about this traffic situation and just please don't allow it. It's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, Mrs. Clary. This name I'm not going to get right. First name is Garrett?
Yes.
Last name?
Garrett
Montgomery, okay.
Sorry, I'm awful handwritten.
That's okay.
Hi, my name is Garrett Montgomery, 333 Grace Street. So I'm one of the many members of Grace Street that are concerned about the Grange development. And I'm going to reiterate a lot of what Sandy said, is that the biggest concern that I'm seeing is this traffic that we're looking at here. We've got the map of the Grange development here. You've got key pieces of infrastructure like Route 10 that you're not even utilizing with this development. And you're routing, looks like you're routing traffic, or what the developers are going to want to route traffic into our historic district. It just absolutely makes zero sense to me to be utilizing a historic, walkable downtown to route 5,000 cars through every day. It just absolutely makes no sense, especially when you've got a key piece of infrastructure like Route 10 to utilize there that can be on Aidflix. What makes downtown great is walkability. It really does. And to reiterate what Sandy was saying, that you want to feel safe, you want to walk, you want to be able to see the beautiful homes, you want to be able to go to the shops, to be able to be comfortable downtown. And when you've got all those vehicles, you just aren't. People aren't going to enjoy it, and it's not going to attract people there, and it's going to ruin our downtown. You guys have a fantastic opportunity with the developer wanting to build something seemingly really nice from what I've seen, but there's right ways to do things and there's wrong ways to do things. And you have a great opportunity to do it the right way. Utilize this developer it's going to change downtown for decades, what we're going to be doing. It's going to change Smithfield for decades. Please, I'm just implore you, try to do it right. Look at it, really do your research and do this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Traffic seems to be a consistent challenge that we're hearing from a lot of citizens. I do invite you to come back on Thursday, and it is my hope, Michael, that we can address, if not all the concerns, the majority of the concerns, and we can kind of come to a mutual agreement. So I do invite you back on Thursday when we have the work session. Beth Curley?
Hi, Beth Kirby, 328 Grace Street.
I'm sorry, Kirby.
It's okay.
Kirby, okay.
Yes. I lived in Virginia Beach about 22 years. I'm originally a damn Yankee. It never felt like home. I didn't see familiar faces at the hardware, the grocery, or the shops. I didn't feel I should shop local and small. We didn't have restaurants we frequented on a regular basis because they were gathering spots where you knew the staff and owner. It didn't feel like a community where you wanted to volunteer to wear a costume for a holiday town event. We surely wouldn't have driven in a parade. We didn't have community park concerts where you again saw familiar faces. We didn't even consider attending plays or special concerts at a place like the center. Living here has been a blessing. But now there's an awful dark cloud looming over us. People want to make huge changes to this special place. Growing it too big will make it totally different. I've attended quite a few planning commission meetings and town council meetings regarding the Grange. The town attorney more than once calmed council members saying that Luter's team would ask for the max, but that you don't have to give it to them. Why aren't we pushing back? There's room to compromise. The number of citizens that aren't happy with this as it's proposed is very large. Why aren't their concerns being considered? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirby. Andrea Montgomery?
Hello, my name is Andrea Montgomery. I live at 337 Grace Street. I've lived all over the world. I've lived all over the United States. I thought I was done. I moved to Tennessee, built my dream house, and that was going to be it. And then they gave me my first grandchild. That is my son, and I couldn't be more proud of him. Because he grew up in zoning meetings, Dan and I ran airports. I've been to more zoning meetings than I can ever imagine. I've also been involved in a lot of economic development and a lot of zoning. The project as it is, it's going to come. We need to increase the tax base. I understand that. But it wasn't planned right. And anybody who works in zoning knows there are things we can do between the historic district and into this district to make it walkable, to make it safe. I also know a thing or two about infrastructure. And right now in front of my house in Grace Street, I have a lake. And I have a lake every time it rains. And I have school buses. And that street doesn't even have a sidewalk all the way down. There's no way, the way the structure of it is right now, could support 5,500 cars in addition. I think there's some things you can do. I think there's some things you can change. And I think that you have some really educated people in your zoning department. And I would like to hear what they think about some transitional zoning that would not only preserve our historic district, continue operating our tax base, and really preserving our infrastructure. We shouldn't be footing the bill for this. I'm all about public-private partnerships. I've done a lot in the aviation business with that, but, you know, don't give away the whole bank. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. And last but, well, not least, but it may not be last, Bill Harris.
Almost like I should have my own chair over there. Bill Harris, 329 Grace Street, beautiful downtown Smithfield. Just want to throw a couple things out there. You guys' plates are incredibly full. Said way too unoften by all of us, the work that you do on our behalf is amazing. We appreciate that. And hopefully we'll all remember that everybody has the best interests of Smithfield, you know, in sight, maybe just be through different lenses. A couple of things I would like to throw out in chunks. First, you know, just this growing concern on the part of a lot of citizens, and I know on the part of lots of you guys too, some public statements and the candidates forum, concern over our involvement financially through the public-private partnership, which is mentioned over and over again in the applicant's package. A question you don't need to answer now, but has there been discussion among you as a council, all the council members together, to simply make it policy that Smithfield does not provide any public money for private enterprise? Today's economic times are not good. Most of us are struggling. A lot of you, people over here on my right, Renee and Randy, have really been sort of like the forerunners for a while of protecting public funds, and we really appreciate that. You know, she said, let's don't waste this and let's don't waste that. And yet we're looking at a public-private partnership that will engage we taxpayers over a long period of time to spend an awful lot of money to help somebody else make a huge profit. You know, maybe it's time that we make a policy that the town just doesn't do this. Small town charm, historic Smithfield. We got a chance to lose both of those things very quickly. Already a couple folks have talked about the small town charm. It is absolutely there. those of us that are close enough to it are maybe a little bit spoiled than other folks. But if we double the available population in historic Smithfield and put all that traffic down there, a lot of that hometown charm is going to disappear. It is increasingly dangerous. I've shared that with the chief. I've had a couple meetings, always responsive. I know they're trying to do what they can do. But come sit on our porches. It's not a makeup. We watch people pass each other on Grace Street because somebody's doing 25 and somebody will just wing right around them. You know, we've got to bring all that under control. We're also on the edge of losing our history. The Pierceville property tract is the last great chunk of historic property, not just in Smithfield, but in the whole area. And we're getting ready to poison it with an uncontrolled PMUD operation, which, and extended, will allow the builder to do virtually anything he wants within the parameters of the PMUD zoning that's in place. We have one of the Tidewater's oldest 3 black churches. We have a schoolhouse museum right there. Neither one of these properties, neither one of these concepts or ideas are receiving any mention from the developer. The original plans, a building or two, some supporting structures around the schoolhouse. What happened? Parking available for the church. Okay, 2 blocks away. That's a long walk for an awful lot of people of age, and I'm certainly one of those. We need to, as Mike said earlier, you know, if it's got to be compromised, be compromised.
1 minute.
But let's be aware of cost. Let's be aware of our history. Let's be aware of the small town charm. And let's be aware of walkability. Would you guys ask the developers what's going to go in the strip, the commercial strip that's going to increase walkability? So far, we haven't heard anything. You know, are there going to be some shops? Yeah, what shops? There are no specifics attached to this that are going to bring people here and walk them up and down Main Street, which of course is also going to be traffic heavy. And if they're going to walk up and down Grace, they're going to have to be really, really careful. Thank y'all. Tough job. Do what you can. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday. And before I go, Madam Vice Chairperson, will the public be able to have any input on Thursday?
At this point, Bill, Thursday's meeting is a work session. There will be a presentation from staff as far as the processes, what have happened, explaining the PMUD, and also presenting questions and answers that have been sent to town management, which has been answered by the town manager and staff, with questions from town council members as well as the developer. I don't want to speak out of line, but maybe that's something that we can take under advisement. Any questions that we've been given up to this point, I'm sure that they will be addressed on Thursday as well. You know, if you want something to be considered, does it have to be a public address, or would you be amenable to sending an email to either town council or town management?
Either. I mean, Renee suggested at the last meeting that the public, you know, 4 or 5 people, or each of you would appoint somebody. I know y'all are hearing this. There's a huge concern out there that you're on the verge of repeating the Mallory Farm fiasco, where public discussion was just simply, you know, closed down. And that's not good for anybody. Nobody should walk away from this final operation with bad blood and finger pointing. And if the public is not allowed to raise some questions in either fashion that you suggest, then we'll risk really, you know, blood in the water, and nothing destroys small town charm than small town backstab.
Would they be new questions, or?
Well, a lot of questions weren't answered, specific point-blank questions were never answered at Planning Commission. You know, every one of these meetings at Planning Commission and here, the opening remark is, if you have questions that need responses, written responses will be forthcoming. I know you all know this. Mary and I haven't missed a meeting 1 or 2 in 18 or 20 months. We haven't received a written response to any question, nor has anybody else, in the concerned citizens group. Same thing in the planning commission. So just asking questions, not getting answers, really isn't enough, and that's why we're really kind of hoping that y'all would act on Renee's suggestion and have, not an adversary, but a voice that could ask, Mr. Luter or Venable or some, the cut through. There's nothing in the plan that explains why the cut through on Gray Street. There's nothing in the plan that says that there was a discussion between VDOT and the Luter planning team. It's just, well, we're going to cut through here. These are the type of things that somebody, we'd love to have somebody explain. I know I'm way over time and don't want to take anybody else's time, but I appreciate the opportunity to engage.
Question, can we have a dialogue? I'd like to know how my other colleagues feel about the procedure for Thursday.
Every single one of the questions that I submitted for Thursday, I took directly from my notes from the public hearing. So a lot of the concerns that citizens had, I had written down. I think I submitted 13 items that I wanted clarification on.
So some of the concerns will probably be
A lot of the
addressed.
concerns are going to come up. I don't know.
It's your meeting, but,
Yeah.
but work sessions are designed for you to, and we've done this in the past on many different occasions involving different kinds of projects, and it's designed for you as a council who are representatives. This is a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. You are elected to make decisions, and you have an opportunity to ask questions and get answers, and that's what it's designed to do. And there's been public hearings, multitudes of public hearings, and opportunities for the public to raise questions, and you've heard them over and over again. Obviously, you've taken notes. This, if it becomes once again, a public hearing, then it gets, the whole opportunity for you to get the answers that you might need will probably evaporate. And it's just, we did this at the planning commission level. That's what they did as well. But it's, you can do anything you want to. That's your decision. You're the, I'm just.
Ms. Butler,
Randy?
obviously, I'm trying to remain out of this and stay neutral, but from a format standpoint, and speaking to Mr. Harrison's point, if a if a constituent has a specific question, emailing us a list of questions and letting us go through them and asking them, I don't see how that can be a terrible idea.
Okay.
I mean, it gives them an opportunity to speak, and I think that's Mr. Harris's point. I mean, he was very clear and fair and says, we don't want bad blood, we just got a few questions we want answered. If there's a explanation for the Grace Street cut-through that somebody could explain, perhaps it would be more palatable to the residents. Perhaps not, but at least they would then have an answer, and I think that's all he's trying to get to at this, is say, hey, we just have a few very point-blank questions, not questions that are just like, well, wouldn't it be better if this was just a flower garden? But very specific and technical questions, I think, would be a very reasonable compromise, and especially when we hear the public saying we're not included enough, I've always felt like we do try really hard to include the public, but if they're saying we're not hearing you, you're not hearing us, if we list the email questions, and to Mr. Riddick's point, public hearings can get a little overwhelming, and points get lost when emotions get brought into stuff. But if we have a list from Bill and those and they have questions that are specific, I think it'd be very appropriate for us to have a list of questions and say, hey, development team, why the Grace Street cut through? What brought you to that? So my 2 cents.
Bill, do you think that that's possible, that you could get us a list of questions?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay. And I know
it's
the other,
best I understand what Bill's saying. I'm not suggesting that it's a 4-hour, I ask my question, I don't get the right answer, and I want, maybe stand up and say, this is my question, and then sit back down, and you all hash it out or fill it out. But if email is the preferred route, the one that falls within whatever the operating procedure is.
If I may, What has happened so far is members compiled a list of questions. The vast majority of those came directly from public comment and what they heard. Those were then submitted to town staff. The ones that were directed at staff, we have in turn answered and submitted responses to. The ones that were directed at the developer that we couldn't answer, we submitted to them and they have provided responses to. That has all been given to council. Anybody who wants that, I just need a way to get it to you. So if you've got an email address or something and would like to see that, just give me a way to get it to you and I'll get it to you. It should be most of the questions that have come up in public comment sections. I know a couple council members did a really good job of putting that stuff together and supplying it to us. So we can by all means provide that to you, and it may answer your questions, it may or may not satisfactorily answer your questions, but we can at least provide you that information that we do have, and that may help. But I just have to have.
Certainly lifts part of the veil,
Right.
because at this point, we don't know what
Right.
questions might be.
So,
Great idea.
by all means, if you've got a way for me to get it to you, I'll send off an email and let you have it. So-
Wayne, you have anything to add?
No, along with what Michael's saying, I've got the answers written here from both
Yes.
the citizens and from the looters. I can provide that information to you. I have no problem with that at all.
And anybody who wants it, my email address is on the town's website. We'll be happy to send it to you. Yes.
Mike?
So that's not a problem.
I've received more questions since we turned in our
Okay.
questions Monday, a week ago, I guess. And one of the things is, since we were so big on this transparency and making sure that we could be seen by other people that could not attend, they have questioned me as to why these things are not put up on the town website, so they could read them on the website.
We can
And
do
so
it.
instead of just
Yeah.
sending individual emails to an individual, the whole town has the opportunity to pull the website up
We
and look
can
at
do
that.
that. What we'll do is we'll create a news post on the website that has links to these documents in them, so that way everybody can go get them.
It's really hard to
Not a
find
problem.
stuff on the website, Michael.
Right, that's, well, and what
I
will
think
do
I know
is
what I'm
make
looking for. I
it'll
can't
be
even
a
find it.
tickler on the top, so.
You would put something on the top
Yes,
that's
it'll be
specific.
scrolling, we can put it to Facebook and everywhere else we go. We'll make it as easy to find as possible.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, I will not be at the the working meeting this Thursday. It's going to be my first day in Ireland for several days. So I feel like I'm a part of the general public in this respect because I have to submit my questions, comments, and concerns, and I'm going to be sending that to Tammy Clary. She just doesn't know it yet, and I'm going to have her read those during that meeting. So I'm not going to have an opportunity to have dialogue. It's just not going to be possible with the time change and such. In addition, I will not be at the next town council meeting. However, I will be dialed in several hours ahead of you for a potential vote, if it goes to a vote. We don't know what's going to happen. But I concur with everybody else. I have received numerous requests, questions, concerns, comments over the Pierceville project. And I'm trying to consolidate all those into what have we really not addressed that's new. You know, we don't want to talk about traffic on Gray Street. That's an ongoing thing. We know that. But I've got some other ideas. I'm going to, the next, probably tomorrow, I'm going to compile all of what I'd like to have answered. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be here for the dialogue, which I wish I was. But things happen, and honeymoons happen, and big birthdays happen, and this trip's been planned for quite some time. But Bill, back to your question, is there an opportunity for public comments at that meeting? I think it was made very clear at our last meeting that was not going to be welcomed. And procedurally, I don't know how that works. I'm still new in the public service arena. Where there's a will, there's a way, I'm sure. But I'm not going to be here, so I don't know. Is the mayor's going to be here, isn't he? Okay, okay. So he'll be here, and he'll kind of run the show, and good luck to y'all, and thanks for showing up.
I'm sorry, Jeff, did I hear you say that you're submitting questions for the work session
I
on
am.
Thursday? Didn't we have a deadline for submitting those if we wanted answers?
We
can
did.
take- And we can try to get more answered. We'll
Did you
do our
turn some
best.
in the first time?
Not yet.
Oh, you just thought
I'm-
these
I'm
up?
still compiling, because I knew I wasn't going to be here.
Oh, okay,
I only think 3 of us turned questions in.
okay.
Are you trying to shut me down?
I'm not trying to shut you down. I'm just saying we had a deadline, and I worked pretty hard to get my 13 in, so I just wondered why you had a whole list that's new now.
I'm special.
It's fine, okay, good.
Bill, does that answer a
certainly
portion of
helps,
the questions? And I'm hoping that we'll be able to address, if not all the questions, at least the majority of the questions that citizens have. And if you have something new, please send us an email. I'm sure that Michael and staff will be glad to address those. And if it's something that we can't address, I know that they've sent questions to the developers, and they in turn have responded as well.
Right. And the other thing I'll say is currently, it is not anticipated to have a public comment period at the Thursday meeting. However, public comment will be on the agenda for the September 5th council meeting. So that'll be another opportunity
Yeah.
that the citizens can speak if the outcome of Thursday's meeting doesn't address a question.
Thank you all.
Thank you. They're all the comments that we have signed up. Does anybody else have any comments that they'd like to present to us? Yes.
I should have signed up. This has, I'm going to change the topic, even though we're talking about the grant all day.
I was surprised to see Bill on here, not you on here.
You're tired of seeing me, aren't you? I'm Mary Harris. I live at 329 Grace Street. I had a safety issue last week, and I put it on our Nextdoor app, and I put it on, gosh, it seems like somewhere else. I was walking down Main Street. I called the police office, the non-emergency number about this. And this brings up more concerns about bringing more people, more growth, and not being able to actually hire the police officers for various reasons. I mean, people just aren't doing that anymore, unfortunately. But we're down officers now, and I don't know how we think we're going to have enough with all the growth that's coming. I mean, we have at least 1,200 homes approved, another 300 in this development. That's another, I don't know, 5 or 10 police officers to hire in addition to what we're short already. Or whatever it is, whatever the ratio is. It's like 300 citizens to every police officer, something like that on a national website. Anyway, I'm walking down Main Street. I had a gentleman pull over in an SUV. He said, "You live in Smithfield?" I mean, this is a friendly little town, right? So I'm thinking, it's daylight. I have a cup of coffee in my hand. I walk back from Pure Coffee Shop. It's 9 o'clock or 9:10 in the morning. He pulls over, rolls his window down, has dark tinted windows, a light colored SUV was all I could remember. And I stepped closer to his vehicle, and he says to me, asked me something else about Smithfield, and I'm thinking he wants directions, right? Well, that's what people usually do in town. He calls me to his window. I don't go closer. I'm thinking, this is kind of weird. And he's got a little bottle in his hand. He goes, "I'm feeding my baby milk." He said it just like some kind of weird comment. And I said, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Would you like to look closer and look at my baby?" And he says this over to me several times. I mean, it was very creepy. I said, "Well, no, thank you." And I stepped back up on the sidewalk. It was very weird. And I went into the post office because I was concerned about this car following me home because I live a block away. It was extremely odd. It was extremely concerning to me or to anybody who I would see on the, this guy was not asking me to give him directions. He was not, he wanted me to look in his car for some reason and not for a good reason. So, when I called the non-emergency police person who answered the phone, she said, "No, that's very suspicious." She said I reported to all the officers, which I hope she did. And this is what concerns me about downtown Smithfield. We don't see a lot of police cars on our roadways, and that is because they are busy doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we are short officers. I'm very concerned about with the growth that's coming that we're not going to have enough police, fire, ambulance services to cover the ground we need as a community. And I think we just don't even have an idea what that's going to be. So if they will do that to somebody like me, I mean, at least I'm smart enough to step back and not let somebody do whatever, exhibit himself or make me look in the back of his car at something or whatever his goal was. So, I mean, it just is a very weird occurrence. The only time it's happened here to me, something like that. I mean, your instincts are strong as a woman to say, that's not right, that's really creepy. I don't think it should be downplayed. And so I'm sharing that with you as the council. If you did not see that report, I don't do this. I don't put stuff out there, but I don't want one of our young women or young teenage girls being lured into a vehicle or having to experience something, you know, criminal, if you want to say that, or something not good for them, because I didn't think it was important enough to report it. And I think that we have to know we are in a different era. Our small town charm is leaving this town. And the more that that happens, the more that we ignore that statement by the public and the concern the public has for this,
1 minute.
the more this is going to become an issue for us. So I'm sharing that with you. It's a concern of mine. I walk around town a lot, so do the people I know and love on Grace Street. And then I will end with one thing, is if we change this town, like we're talking about changing, doubling the residences, it will not be the same. Grace Street has always been a place that people come for Halloween. People like to come drive down there for Christmas decorations. That is going to happen. We can't handle 3,000 kids on Grace Street on Halloween night. It was a zoo last year. So if these things are the charm that you grew up with as kids, you want to keep it, that's on your shoulders right now. You can make those choices. So anyway, thank you.
Mary, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any more comments?
I just have one question.
You've,
Sam Clary then?
you've already had your opportunity to speak,
Well, it's
Ms.
only a
Clary.
question. It's just a police question. I just wanted to know if you had a way to check for sexual offenders, if I could call the police department, they could help me with that question.
I think that's public information, but I'm sure that the police department will assist you with that. Okay,
My next door neighbor is doing an Airbnb, and I have little kids.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments from the chair? If not, we'll close citizens' comments and we'll go right into our committee meetings. The first committee is public safety.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Mayor and public. I'm going to start with the public safety members of myself, Councilwoman Roundtree, and Councilman Brooks. Number one is the operational update from the police department. Chief?
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, members of council, and the general public. In reference to operational updates, I will start off with, since traffic has been one of the ongoing themes, we were asked to look at the speed limit on Carey Street. Myself, Councilman Hall, and the representative, the county engineer, we met with a VDOT representative. We met with a VDOT representative, and from that meeting, a resolution was asked. My understanding is a resolution has been sent to VDOT, and that is in the process of going through the channels of VDOT for them to do a speed analysis on Carey Street. Once they complete that speed analysis, they will be contacting town staff, and I will be notified as to when we receive that analysis, and we will take a look at to see what their recommendations are, to see what the traffic numbers look like according to VDOT, and then we will bring that finding back to the council. So that is forthcoming. I do not have a timeline, but I do know they said it'll be anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks once they start the analysis. So that is ongoing. Also in the form of operational updates, we had one civilian employee to start today for administrative staff. So that vacancy is filled. We have, currently we have 5 vacancies. That's for sworn personnel. But I'm going to categorize that as being 4. because one of the applicants, we have an applicant that is 98% completed the applicant process, and we were working on completing that. Once that's completed, we will be given a start date to start sometime within, hopefully, the next 2 to 3 weeks. That will leave us with 4 vacancies. Our plan to fill those 4 vacancies, we are in the process of scheduling current interviews for the applications that we have received.
Excuse me.
Some of those applicants are certified, so they will be able to start sooner, and some are not. The next academy starts first of the year, and we are starting that process now. We've looked internally to see if we have an applicant that is due to go through the academy, whether or not we can bring them on and have them do some beneficial work for the department. That way we can keep them. So we are looking at those, and it is an ongoing process. As we get qualified people, we are interviewing them and putting them in through the background phase. Also in the form of operational updates, homicide is still in the forefront. We are still working very diligently on that, as well as other criminal cases. I can tell you that several search warrants have been obtained in reference to work in that investigation, and it's still very much an ongoing investigation. We are working with not only the Smithfield Police Department, but we've extended the invitation for outside assistance to assist us with this case. We are also, our boat. Our boat will be in the water through Labor Day, but right after Labor Day, we'll be taking our boat out of the water for some equipment, electronic updates, and it will probably out of the water for probably 4 weeks or so. And that's a rough estimate. The equipment updates that we are due to have put on the boat, we've been in a holding pattern for a number of years, so we finally got the green light to bring our boat for those updates. And we received a grant in order for that to take place. So that completes my operational updates, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of council's questions.
Any questions?
I got questions. I got 3 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The information that Mrs. Harris just brought to light to us, do you have any information to share with us in reference to that?
When the officer responded to the area, they were given a very general description, and the officers checked the area and to no avail. So we have nothing additional that we could share with council in reference to the vehicle, direction of travel, or anything, but the officers did check the area.
Vice Mayor Butler, I heard about this over the weekend. I'm sorry, Ms. Harris, that happened to you. I did not, it doesn't matter who it happened to, but I am especially sorry that happened to you. But I heard about it in my neighborhood over the weekend. And I was told that some of the merchants were trying to pull video. Was that not successful?
No, ma'am.
Like the Merc and Pearls, I know. I just heard they were trying to pull.
When we have situations such as this, that is one of the first things we try to look for. And a lot of times, if there is video, a lot of times what we found out is the quality of a video is sometimes it'll be just a blur, but if video, usable video is to our avail, we seek to obtain.
Well, the fact that we know something did happen, we may want to add additional patrol to kind of alleviate.
In reference to patrol, the officers have been advised to mark out on the radio when they are out on Main Street on foot patrol. A lot of times they will hit maybe one section of Main Street. They may not walk the entire section, but I can assure you officers are out on Main Street.
Okay. My other question is, you talked about the homicide that took place here. You say that there are search warrants?
Yes, looking for data. Looking for electronic data.
Oh, looking for electronic
Yes, ma'am.
data. And the vacancies that we have. It's taken us a while. My question is, is it a lack of applications, a lack of interest?
We are not receiving nowhere near the number of applications that we once received. It is not only in Smithfield, it is across the country. The interest to go in this profession is not there. And sometimes when you do have people that are interested, a lot of times when you run them through the background phase, people are eliminated for various reasons. I have a list of several applicants that were put through the process they either withdrew or there was something in their background that caused them not to be moved further in the process.
So it's the quality of applicants
Yes.
too. So I think we voted some time ago to offer bonuses. That doesn't seem to be,
We do have the sign-on bonus for certified and non-certified personnel. We've had 2 people to receive it. It didn't cause them to stay. However, some that have received it, they are staying because people leave for different reasons. I have been in conversation with some applicants, and some of the younger applicants, they're looking for money. And I would tell you, we cannot compete with some of those agencies that are paying a higher salary, a higher starting salary than what we are. My understanding from speaking to some of my colleagues is that this wave of increase in salary is about to hit again. My understanding is going to start in Henrico, and it's going to move its way from one jurisdiction to the other. What's driving this trend, I don't know. But according to some of the colleagues that I've talked to, that second wave is about to happen.
okay, thanks, Chief Howell.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
I had a few questions.
Sure.
Just along the lines of pay, we do have, our starting pay is on par with the county now though, right? Didn't we fix that last time?
Yes. The county is
It
slightly
was like a
higher.
half answer.
The county is slightly higher than we are. However, we do consider experience, so we do give credit for prior experience. And so that has helped us some. But we are slightly, our starting salary is slightly lower than county, only maybe a couple $100 if I'm not mistaken.
But then with grade and step, you can get them with experience to where they need to be. Okay. All right. So, on the way over here, I know this is a county alert system, but I got like a storm warning alert, on text because I sign up for something. And I'm just thinking, other than that puddle I had to avoid on Gray Street, that poor lady's driveway, that I did see on the way here. I should have gone downtown, but I went on Gray Street. Do we have any kind of alert system? I cannot physically check next door all the time because it gets so controversial and people are so angry. But, if we can alert for a big puddle of rain, and I know it's rained all day, but it's really fine. Can we have some kind of an alert system for people that are interested when something happens that we should all be looking for?
We have the ability to access the same mile-away alert system that the county has. They have the ability to give us access in to do alerts within the town boundaries. We have that ability.
Because when we sign up, we say where we live, right? And so then you just kind of truncate that and you locate
Right.
to like District 1 or the town limits or whatever. Have you ever done that? Have we ever
I would
used
say
it?
it's probably not something we use very often because the last training that I know that I had on it was 5-6 years ago. So we can go back and have them come do a training exercise and teach us how to use it again. As far as I know, we still have access to it.
So I know you guys know I work in healthcare. 95% of messages when you're trying to get a hold of patients to get their colonoscopy and mammogram and to come in for testing and treatment, 95% of text messages are open. People throw away mail. They don't answer their phone. Kids of my children's age don't check email. Next door is annoying. But text messages people get and they read. So it's a good way to communicate. I guess I would just ask you to think about it. If we can alert for a puddle, we could probably alert for a guy in a van, who's trying to pick up one of our citizens downtown.
And if I may, we are looking at moving with additional software with the county. We are in the implementation stages. I think by the end of the year, towards the beginning part of the year, we may have, I'm not sure if we will have that capability, but it's something that we can definitely look into.
Okay.
And that is the new CAD and RMS system.
Well, I wouldn't mind getting a report back on that, you know, in a future committee meeting, if that's okay with you. I think that'd be a good way just to communicate and connect each other, because, you know, you are 4 officers down. And I did want to ask you, you know, as neighborhoods roll online, I mean, I know that nothing's being built at, you know, the Scott Farm, Mallory Point and that yet. But as we do roll new homes and new citizens online, what's the process? I mean, I know we just went through the budget process, but did you budget for additional officers in parallel with growth?
Generally speaking, there's a number between 300 and 500 people. For every 300, 500, you want an officer. No new positions were budgeted in this budget, but as population growth happens, we will have to account for that. But generally, you want to be in that 300 to 500 people per officer.
So 22 to 23 versus 23 to 24, we don't have any increase?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then my last question has to do, and you may not know specifically, but maybe Mr. Riddick knows about the traffic cameras. And I don't know if you were going to bring that up, but have we heard any more about what the county's doing with that, or the coordination of that is my question.
The last conversation I had with the county administrator was that we wanted to work with them as they did it. They, as far as I know, have not formally acted on anything. I know they are talking to the company that we initially were talking to, but my understanding is they haven't actually moved on any of it.
In fact, I had a conversation with the sheriff today, and he was talking with one of the members of the board with that same issue. And I'm not exactly sure where they are, but I do know what company they are considering once they do decide to move forward.
But that will be a topic at the intergovernmental meeting. The cameras will be a topic on that meeting. But my understanding right now is they have not moved on it.
And did we schedule that yet?
We're still trying to find a date that works for everybody.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, item number 2, operational update for Isle of Wight Volunteer Rescue Squad. Chief Carroll.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
I was going to start where the chief left off with the new CAD system and the RMS, because that is quite an exciting project that we're all doing together with the town and the county, that's going to bring us into the new century with RMS and computer-aided dispatch, and the ability, especially the ability for we as volunteers to be able to see what's going on. You know, the police department and sheriff's office over the years have had MDTs in their car, which have been very expensive pieces of equipment, and got live updates on calls all the time. This new CAD system is going to give us the same ability on really just your smart device or your smartphone or iPad or whatever's in the Medi. And we, for the first time in Fire and EMS, will be able to see live updates on every call we go to. And just like the chief said, I think by the end of the year, we'll be pretty well along in that process. So that's exciting news. A little bit on operations. We just started another EMT class for the fall with about 15 students. We finished one back in June. All but 3 have tested, and of the class that tested, I think 100% of them have passed. There's 3 more to test, so once we get them 3 out, we'll be good. We're picking up 5 or 6 applicants a month. You know, we talked about that a little bit last time I was here, and that's increased a little bit. That is certainly very encouraging. And we're seeing a little different trend on where those applicants are coming from. A lot of them are coming from high school and high school kids now. So might be an opportunity for the schools to introduce a program in the schools like they have culinary and everything else to teach fire and EMS. We taught that at Isle of Wight Academy. We taught stop and bleed. Taught all the teachers and all the faculty stop and bleed and active shooter before they went back to school in their orientation a couple weeks ago. I think there was 50 or 60 of them. I misunderstood Mr. Mumford. I thought he said 5 or 6 when he called me.
Everybody was happy but my instructor.
Who was the instructor?
It was not a certification class, so numbers didn't matter. They got the gist of the topic, and that's very, very important. So,
You had to buy him lunch?
yeah, I did. Probably gonna have to make up for it for a while. Our training room at the squad, the HVAC has been down in it all summer long. It's been a long, hot summer. We're finally getting some results from the county, but we had to go to some extreme email measures to get that done. That's really uncalled for. It's 90 degrees in that room. We just can't teach in it. We've had to move every class we've had this summer, and that's pretty much not acceptable for a 6-year-old building. It's an isolated room. It's a big box like this. It can't be that hard to cool it. So hopefully, we're on the way to repairing that system so we can get back in there. I just wanted to point out, I talked a little bit, or asked a little bit last month about the traffic flow on Church Street when we do that bridge project, and it was the very next Friday that we had an accident down in the bottom at the station, and I just have to say that the medic coming to that accident was delayed by some nearly 12 minutes trying to come from Main Street, because it is impossible in alternating traffic to get that ambulance. The citizens on the 100 to 400 block of South Church Street are gonna have to expect delayed responses if we go with alternating traffic. That's just my professional opinion. I maintain that traffic has to flow consistently in one direction for public safety purposes. Otherwise, those 4 blocks of South Church Street are gonna have to expect extensive delays. And the simple reason is, you know, that ambulance, traffic was blocked, cars were turning around, there was nowhere for anybody to get. Pretty much until we cleared out 4 blocks of Church Street, the ambulance couldn't get to us. So, just more food for thought on that subject.
So, Brian, with that in mind, because I'm affected and all of my customers are potentially affected, so you would prefer to see dedicated one-way traffic?
I would prefer to see traffic flow from the 800 block to downtown, because that's where the fire station is.
Okay.
And because if an ambulance has to come around to anybody on Church Street on that end, they can get around Talbot, or they can get around in Moonfield. There's just no way to get around for those 3 blocks of downtown.
So one of the reasons we on council wanted alternating one-way is because if there was a wreck on the bypass, and the bypass were shut down, because there's only 2 ways around town, really.
Right.
Until you start going down Great Springs and get all the back roads.
Well, that bridge closed for a year too.
Right, yeah.
Right.
So if that were the scenario, if there's a wreck on the bypass and so folks can't then leave town, so how does that affect your scenario? None of us could. We need.
None of
Yeah.
it's perfect. And I have to tell you, that bridge delay on the bypass, I mean, we went around Turner Drive on many a day and came back into town because of.
Which is not
The same thing
not
on the
easy.
bypass.
Yeah.
We couldn't get through. We could pull off Fairway Drive and we were at a stop. You couldn't go into oncoming traffic. We just started going around Scott's Factory and coming back into town, or going non-emergent out the other way and coming down Main Street.
Michael, do we still have persuasion with VDOT if we because we're the ones that asked for the traffic light?
Potentially, and I wrote down to reach out and find out, since they've already let the contract, well, the bids are out. I think they're anticipating letting the contract in November still. So, I mean, possibly, but, you know, the bids are out on alternate traffic. So, I mean, we can reach out and see what the best alternative is, but I'm not 100% sure we can change it, but we can ask.
Wouldn't that cost less, because then you don't have to put up a light?
There's,
Theoretically, but you could still have some signage or whatever. I think what we want is whatever the best solution is for the town. You know, and we thought it was alternating traffic, because that makes sense. But I could also, I've been afraid of that, yeah, we're gonna have alternating traffic, but you know, there's gonna be 30 seconds maybe where they're waiting for the bridge to clear before they can go, so I've always known it was gonna be a nightmare.
I mean, from what I remember, that survey was based on a survey about 4 years ago of business people, what they wanted to see, the alternating stuff.
Judy, can you speak
Remember we
to?
did that through the chamber? Remember that?
Because it wasn't just Smithfield Station, it was, of course, the Main Street residents. And, you know, I guess, you know, I think your point is well taken that if it's a flow into Smithfield from, across the bridge, we got a bunch of residents here. You guys want to drive around the bypass and for a year and a half? Probably not.
I don't know if it's practical, but in Sandbridge Road, the only way down to Sandbridge and all those people that live down there and all the guests that come, they built a temporary bridge or a temporary portion of a road that went over the water. And we used that, and then when this one was repaired, they tore down the temporary.
They're doing that at Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel right now.
Yeah. So you're saying you think it'd be best for safety if traffic went into town?
I think
Only.
so. More specific to the fire department, that's where they're coming.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So then everybody downtown, as they left, would have to take the bypass. Is that what you just said?
I'm in favor of the temporary bridge.
Okay, Sandbridge.
But more importantly, I
I
just
know
want to
where it's at,
emphasize
yeah.
that once it starts, if we don't do that, the citizens in the 100 to 400 block are just gonna have to expect delays.
Well, does anybody expect a delay when they're having a heart attack? That's cool. I'm gonna call 15 minutes earlier because I know the ambulance is gonna take a little bit longer to get here. I won't choke on my food for another 15 minutes.
It's nice. We should ask that.
And then the last thing I'm gonna comment on is I'm not gonna weigh in on the Grange project. There was a comment at, I think at your public hearing, which is closed, that we had an ambulance in this area and that may affect response. I didn't watch the meeting, somebody called me about it. But I just will say that we are prepared to support any project and provide EMS to any project, no matter how it falls in the county. That's our job. Our standard is 90 seconds out the door. We're gonna maintain that standard at whatever staffing level it takes to do it. So, the Grange is just one of 15 projects on the board across the county. But the comment was made specifically towards us. I will put that comment in relevance. We did have an ambulance in this area, and it was there 3 weeks. That was because, and we did not have any staffing ability on that ambulance at all. They had a vehicle broke down, didn't have an ambulance in service, and we loaned them a truck. Just as we have borrowed one from Suffolk, or Portsmouth borrows one from Chesapeake, or it just happens in the system. There are no trucks to be bought. There's not an excess $1 million piece of equipment in everybody's fleet. It's just what you do for your neighbor when they need it. So that was the context of why the ambulance was in this area for 3 weeks.
Thank you, Chief.
And I think that's all I got.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chief. Certainly appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't think we really answered the question about the traffic on South Church Street, and I don't think we're gonna answer it right now. But can we put this on for some future discussion and thought before this process
I
starts?
think it's exactly what we need to do.
I think what Chief Carroll just said is not a way I've looked at it before, and it's probably one of the most important ways to
That
look
we
at,
need to look at it.
to look at that traffic issue.
And you will be coming back, Chief, sooner than you want to.
I like seeing you folks.
Good idea, Randy, thank you. And
Thank you.
we'll put that on the next operational update. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, item number 3, operational update, Smithfield Volunteer Fire Department. Chief Smith, how are you, sir?
Don't have a lot this month. We had our open house. We hope everybody can come by and see us. We had a lot of people come. We're hoping to pick up a few members, and we had members from Alawite, Virginia State Police, BMRC, Smithfield PD, and Alawite Rescue Squad joined us, and we've been asked more people to be doing it every year. We had a lot of public involvement into it, and we got to see what the town offers. And they were real impressed at what emergency services they can get in this small little town. So we're hoping to do it every year up there, just to show the people what we do and what they get. For operational update, we had 85 calls of service in June and 54 in July. We had 4 members go through the EVOC Academy this weekend. Hopefully we get 4 new drivers. It's just a rotation base. We get people who last about 5 years and try to get new people coming in. And hopefully we get a bunch of young kids coming in from high school and want to join. And this is the first avenue, like Brian Carroll says, to get into the career department. We can get them in ours, help us out, helps the citizens too. Y'all have any questions for me?
I have a comment I'd like to make, Chief. I know the open house that you had took up all of your space, but I would like to get with the Isle of Wight Rescue Chief and me as president, and maybe we can do a joint open house together. And I think that'd be a great idea for the community to see that we actually do work together along with fire, rescue, and police. It's a joint operation, and I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, next year we hope to do a lot, little demonstrations on it, where we can do a little pop on a car, show the citizen what we do, how to force doors, a little smoke in the building, just to show what a life of a fireman is. We try to recruit many people as we can.
And we'll have rescue there in case something goes south.
That's right.
But I appreciate it. And let's you and I and your chief and my chief get together and talk about it.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Mr.
Wayne.
Brooks was there this weekend. He seen a
Yeah,
lot of people.
Chairman, that was a fantastic open house. I was there for a couple hours. The hot dogs, the popcorn was fantastic as well. Could have been a little bit cooler,
We
but
got you in the dunk tank. Next year we're gonna offer.
is that right? All
We're
right,
there for 30
it goes to the highest bidder. But no, I did want to point that out, that was a fantastic event, and you're right, there were a lot of people there. I mean, people from Suffolk and Chesapeake, because I'm being out and about, like, hey, where are you from? I'm from Suffolk. It's like, how'd you hear about this? And social media, and it just exploded. And it was, I'm kind of ashamed of myself because I've never been in that building. And, I mean, there's nothing to stop me from calling and saying, hey, I want to tour this, like I did with Jack, with all the public works places. So it was fantastic, and the kids absolutely loved it. They got to see all the equipment. And it was nice to see the Virginia State Police there as well. Got a chance to talk to them. So anyway, kudos.
I concur with what Jeff said. Jeff stayed 2 hours. I didn't. I stayed about 30 minutes. I can't tolerate this heat, but it was a very nice event, and it was well attended. I'm always amazed. I ended up showing at one of y'all's training sessions. What I was impressed with, a small town like Smithfield, being able to offer a training session to fire departments all across the United States. So, I was beaming, very proud of, what we can offer here that out-of-towners, are striving to get. But there was a church there serving desserts. They were from Suffolk, Newport News?
I want to say Newport News, York County.
Yeah, and I was curious to know, how did they find out about it? But the lady that I spoke with, they used to live in Smithfield, and they volunteer for events.
They came to us and offered, then they also they gave out bags for the kids for schools.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was a very nice event.
Walmart donated everything to them, so they wanted to help the community out.
But I think it's a good idea if you and Chief Carroll can get together. I had a conversation with someone else about volunteering, and maybe the county would be interested in offering some type of emergency services and fire as part of their CTE program.
And hopefully this fall, we start our Genie program back up again, trying to get kids, so we can get them into
Good.
the firefighter 1 and 2 class.
Any other questions? Thanks, Chief. Great job. All right. That concludes the public safety comments, and I will close this out.
Drove on water and sewer. Numbers on myself, Councilman Pack, and Councilman Hall. We have one operational update from Jack.
Good afternoon. You may have seen some masons working on Hayden's Lane. We addressed some issues with water, made some repairs. All of that work is complete. We've completed the full abandonment of the Mercer Street well. Staff is in the process of collecting lead and copper samples, and we appreciate residents' assistance with pulling these samples. You may have seen, some of you all are on the list. If you received the file, we appreciate your assistance. On Wainwright, staff responded to a water leak and a gas leak that were actually simultaneous, and we were able to get the water cut off and cut our water line out of the gas company's way so they could repair the gas line. And then we made our repairs after they were clear of the job. And then lastly, the crews installing the Hardy water line have found the leak, and the line has passed the pressure test. They're now working on flushing and disinfecting the line. So that project is back moving forward. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Anyone have any questions, Jack? If not, I'll close order so.
All right, I will open the Finance Committee. Myself, Randy Pack, being the chair, with Miss Butler and Mr. Smith joining me. First thing we have up is our financial statements. Ms. Ross.
Thank you. If you have a copy of the financial statements in front of you, you'll notice just a couple of things. They are preliminary. Can you hear me? They,
You're running out of cords.
Wait, no, I'm good. They are preliminary because we have a lot of accruals that need to be made between the June year end and the beginning of July, and those will be made probably towards the next couple of weeks. June is also preliminary before. As mentioned, we have the auditors that will make adjustments to that as well. You'll also notice I have removed the footnote section because those will be updated as well. Everything seems to be tracking as normal based on what I looked at last year for the last year financial statements as of July. If you look at real property taxes on the first page, the largest percentage of what has come in recently has been the delinquent taxes that were due for prior years. And as you're aware, the real estate bills will go out any moment now, and they'll be due on September the 15th, and this is for half the year from January through June 30th. Because the billing cycle has changed, the next real estate tax bill will be for July through June 30th of next year. As I mentioned earlier, everything else is tracking as normal. There are a couple of things that we're looking at that have come in. The use of money, we received interest from the bank because they, for several months, they didn't pay us interest on our funds that were in a town bank, and they replenished those funds to us at the end of July. Also, I am partially done with the investment policy, about 3/4 done. I'll discuss it with Michael when I get a little bit further down. But we have a significant amount of money that is sitting in our bank account that we do need to move into perhaps the VIP or some other vehicles, because we're really not earning that much money at all at the bank. I looked at the CD rates and wasn't really happy with that. But we can earn a lot more at the VIP, but I'd like to move some money from the fund that we're in with VIP. We are in one that is called 1 to 3 year high quality bond fund, and I'd like to move it to the stable fund because I think we can earn about 5% on that, but we'll be talking about that later. And let's see. So the objectives that we're going to have for the month is to examine all of the close process to see if we can tighten that up, to reduce the timelines and identify any changes that need to be made quickly. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Ross? Thank you. How about our cash balances?
I do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back up to banking. I know since Farmers Bank has merged with Town Bank, is there any major differences with our banking relationship as
Well,
compared to what we had?
We had a very exciting month. We have to, yeah. Every time checks are issued, we would have to talk to the bank about it. They would say, hey, these checks have cleared, and that would mean that we had to go back and research them and say, yes, we can clear them. We've eliminated that by having what's called positive pay.
Yeah.
Where we send an issue file to them every day. A couple of days it took to work out the kinks with that. But it seems to be running fine just now.
Do you like the
Okay.
positive pay?
I do.
Do you?
I really do. You feel a lot lot better about it. And what's nice about it is you can do it all on the website, and it's very easy to take a look at it. And it's been, positive pay's been in use for quite a number of years. So I think they've worked out all the bugs. It used to be a lot more difficult than it is to use now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
A lot
can
more
hear you, yes.
difficult
Uh-huh.
than it was to be used now. So the cash balances are pretty much no change with that, but I've been looking at the balances, looking at month over month. It looks like we could potentially take about $10 million and invest it for longer term, especially since they're going to need it later in the year. But we'll be looking at that.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Laura.
I look forward to seeing your investment policies. It's something that I think we've needed for a while and just haven't gotten to, so.
One of the things I wanted to do was do kind of a benchmarking, how we were doing compared to the 90-day T-bill rate, and do a report based on that.
Good.
That's next step.
Good. That means you weren't kidding in your interview. You knew what you were talking about. Thank goodness. Okay, any other questions for Ms. Ross while we have her here?
Ms. Ross, how long have you been in your role?
Do what?
How long have you been in your role?
Since June the 21st. Yes.
So what is that, 90 days, June?
Six-
Not
60.
quite.
60 days.
60? So, 1 to 5, 1 being not at all like you thought or like we said it would be, and 5 being exactly what you thought the job would be. What is it?
Exactly.
A 5?
Yeah.
She says with a smile on her face.
Everybody's great. They
That's a
are.
good answer.
I'm enjoying it a lot.
You are. Thank you.
All right. Moving along, we got item number 3, allocation and reallocation of ARPA funds. Looks like Michael and Amy here.
Included in your packet was the list of all outstanding balances for ARPA-approved projects. This would be any project that has already been approved and had funds allocated to it. Went through and finally was able to reconcile all of the different transactions, and the numbers you have in the memo is what I show as being left on those projects, unspent funds. So all of those funds will need to be reappropriated into this fiscal year's operating budget so that we can continue those projects. The caveat to that, and this is where Ms. Novak is going to come into this, there are a couple projects that since they have been in here, we've gotten actual or more realistic numbers based off of our engineering estimates that we will need to allocate some additional funds to or make some decisions on how best to move forward. Specifically with those are the bridge and pier repairs at Windsor Castle Park. The bids came in on those and they're about $93,000 above what we had allocated. It's good news though, because we actually anticipated it to be almost double what we had allocated, but the bids came in, actually I considered them favorable. But there's $92,986 that we would need to allocate to fully fund that. We did bid it out to where if we don't put additional funds on it, we'll be able to pick the individual bridges within the park and go do them on a per linear foot basis. The other two, and this is where Amy's going to have to speak to, is the concession building and restrooms at the football fields, as well as the maintenance buildings for Luther Sports and Windsor Castle. And this will be the first time with those maintenance buildings especially where the decision not too long ago to have all town buildings comply with the ECO guidelines, where we're going to have to make the decision on whether we want to spend that extra money or submit this project for a waiver. Because you can see in your packet that may be as much as a $500,000 difference in cost to make it brick as the ECO would require versus another building. But I will turn those pieces over to Amy. Based off that discussion and what a decision is made on allocating additional funds, I will then draft that resolution for council for the September 5th meeting to actually appropriate the monies. But council needs to have the discussion on whether it wants to allocate additional funds, and if so, how much and where.
And Michael, give us our deadlines again to allocate and then to complete ARPA
Because
funds.
we elected to use the lost revenue allocation, we are good on
Everything's
deadlines.
allocated. Okay.
Yes, sir. And as you can see, it's kind of hard because it's small, but on that spreadsheet that's got all the different colors on it, on the far right up near the top, you'll see funds still available is 1.4 million. That is the unallocated money that we have not put on any projects yet. Any of those projects that are orange, they're completed and done. The blue ones are currently underway, and the white ones we haven't started yet.
Okay.
But that's the number. That 1.4 is not allocated to any projects yet.
So before we hear from Amy, just so I'm clear,
Yes, ma'am.
on your colored spreadsheet,
Yes, ma'am.
what you're saying is for water and sewer and stormwater, everything except for Parks and Rec, tourism, police department, et cetera, all of those, what we thought the projects were gonna cost is close to what it's gonna cost?
Yes, ma'am. The only one that I will say is still, I've got to finish the water tank for the Wilson Road tank rehab. That project is done. However, I've got to make sure that everything went here that needed to go here versus somewhere else, because some of the engineers' bills had multiple projects on them, and so we still have to finish that piece. Because if you look, it shows that it was $35,000 over budget. It's all the way up
Right.
the top. But other than that, yes, ma'am.
So when you do the Sykes Court water main replacement, you have no reason to think it'll go over 100,000?
We haven't started that yet, and I mean, it's quite possible, because when we came up with these numbers, things have changed significantly in the price of materials and labor costs. As we get to those projects, you're right, it's completely possible that there may need to be a change on it, but we don't have that information.
And in that case, we just cover it with capital?
That would be an option, yes.
Or unspent ARPA funds.
Right, those would be the options, and we would come back to council for a decision when and if that needed to happen.
Because there's two really big projects that you haven't even started.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. And then I don't see the 1.4. The sheet that I'm looking at, it doesn't say it.
It's all the way over on the right.
Oh,
Far
down
right
at the
column.
bottom, down at the bottom, right there.
If you look at. Right. We got it.
Still available.
It's just-
Sewer.
It's up there, it's just where I had it in my spreadsheet, so it's.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's not really
it's-
at the top.
It's not in
It's
an
kind of
amazing
middle.
place,
Okay.
yes.
Hidden, okay.
But Amy, I didn't know if you wanted to talk to those projects and where we are with them.
Are y'all ready for me?
Yeah, please. Come on.
I need, each one of these line items needs more money to finish that project in whole. For the bridge project, like Michael said, we need, 93,000 more to make sure that we can get all the bridges and piers done in one swoop. I really would like to knock that out. That will put us really far ahead with maintenance and reduce the daily maintenance that the guys are struggling with out there to keep up with the bad bridge boards. And like Michael said, we were expecting something over $500,000. So this $310,000 number that you're gonna see under the Parks Committee is really good and refreshing to see.
But we only set aside $217,000.
We are, originally we're focusing that on trail repairs, but we were able to do that with the help of the trail doctors, all in-house. And so we decided to move this money over towards repairing the bridges, putting down fresh walk boards, removing the ties on the side that are so large that it makes it impossible to repair the boards easily and install new ones. So it'll be a huge improvement.
So we're using a different type of material?
No.
Or the same?
This will be treated wood though. Previously, we don't think it was treated to the degree it needed to be.
Okay.
And the other caveat, just talking about the bridge construction, if you notice, there's literally no gap between the boards. The specs in this project allows a gap, and that's part of the problem, is it holds water on the bridge because there's no gap between the boards. And so we've got it spec'd in this project to leave a gap so that water can, go off the bridge and not deteriorate the boards. So it should be much better quality.
It should have lasted a lot longer.
It should.
And then moving on to the Parks Maintenance Building, which we've needed since before we finished Looter Sports. We need a place to keep all of our equipment and then all the equipment that we'll grow into eventually. We need to have a mobile rig where we can go and maintain all of our little tiny park properties like Clontz Park, which Public Works does for us now, Jersey Park, which Public Works does for us currently. We need room to grow, and we've outgrown the pole barn. That's not a safe place to keep equipment. We have a tiny little garage, makes it impossible to perform maintenance, especially on rainy days like today. We just don't have anywhere to put stuff to work on it in-house. But like everything these days, a building that would have cost us $400,000 back a couple years ago is now gonna cost us closer to $800,000. And part of that cost adds in with the brick facing that's required in the entrance corridor. It makes about a $200,000 difference than from doing a steel building.
Thoughts?
It's always possible to request a waiver.
You won't get my vote for it.
You don't get mad for it either.
We have a world-class park, and,
I know.
and it needs to be a world-class park.
Buildings.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm just going to put this out there. My hope, because of citizens' comments with regard to the public-private partnership and the Grange and that, is that if we are able to get a new site for a farmer's market, my kind of hope, so that we could say, hey, we're not taking money to put towards anything from tax money, was that, there would be enough ARPA funds left over that our, I'm going to use air quotes, but pledged contribution to the farmer's market could have come from what was remaining for ARPA, and it's 1.4 million, which is exactly about the amount that we need. So my thought on concession and restrooms and maintenance buildings is that we should put that through the regular capital process and build it and buy it as we have money as funded, through tax revenue. But again, just to put that out there, if the Grange goes through and if we are successful in getting a permanent farmer's market, that was my hope, that we could allocate money that was a gift that was supposed to, be used to stimulate the economy and health and human services and, food availability, et cetera, and all those things. I thought it was a nice marriage. So that's kind of my opinion on that. I think that we could, allocate the $92,000 to do that project the right way, to repair the bridges and that. But I wouldn't be in favor of right now in mid-budget cycle allocating more money to the outbuildings. That's just me.
So how much money, I haven't seen a summary, Amy, how much money are you asking for?
Looks like I'm asking for $647,000 more dollars.
Additional,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Additional to the 400?
Yes. Well, no, this is my total. If I up all of my items to where they need to be, to pay them in full, I'm asking for almost $700,000 more dollars. So we need to look at the park maintenance building separate from the football concession building. Because again, it was an oversight to not get that maintenance building built initially. We've needed it since the beginning, and we need it, yesterday. I really want to see that happen this year. I hope we can fund it in full and not have to wait another budget year or two or more, whatever it would take to have that money set aside. Now, the football concession building, I'm sure the football people would not like to see it wait, but it is a separate building.
Yeah, and they're servicing that out of trailers now.
They actually, they do pop-up tents, and they do a great concession business, and we rent portable restrooms, which don't look great because it's the entry field into the complex, which I don't like, so I would love to have permanent restrooms up there at that side, but
I don't want to
they are
see
two
pop-up
separate
either.
buildings, and that's what I want to make sure.
I think when we get to that, Vice Mayor Butler, we get into that whole, what's the total comprehensive plan for that whole site, right? How much more land do we have? What all needs to go there comprehensively? Last thing I want to do is spend another, $647,000 and then it doesn't support what that's eventually going to be. Does that make sense?
But we've
Well-
already committed to the concessions.
Yeah, so the
and the
concession
restaurants.
stands
We've
are-
already committed to that.
That's finishing the football field as it exists now, finishing the project. That got cut out early. The maintenance building is something that she needs additional. And to your point, the maintenance building, you don't want to build a maintenance building that's half the size of what we're going to need further down the road. I mean, is that what you were saying, right?
Yeah. I'd like the whole plan done.
That's true. But we need to decide on, we don't even know what we want out there.
Right.
I think that needs to be decided first.
Well, we need these two structures now. We needed them yesterday.
Which, the
Even if we
maintenance?
grow and add fields, we still need a concession bathroom space at the football field. We still need a park maintenance building. Now, this parks maintenance building services all of parks and all of the town.
So if we needed it yesterday, why didn't we budget for it?
That's true.
Right? I mean, we're a month, this is what angers me probably the most, is we're sitting a month outside of budget. But we needed it yesterday, but we didn't budget for it.
The ballooning cost of everything is shocking.
Well,
And
No, I
anytime
get
you go
that.
to spend money,
This was budgeted for
Right.
when we started ARPA funds. That was a project that was identified, and money was put in here. The totality of the cost wasn't.
right.
So did it change that much in a month? I mean, did we relook at it as a part of the budget
The
process?
engineers have been in the process of designing the building for the last 6 months. And
Took
so,
this long to get this close
right,
to having
they
numbers
just came
and
to us and
size.
told us the numbers.
Okay.
Mike, you know brick better than most. These numbers are pretty shocking to me, but I mean, do they appear, are they accurate?
They're real,
Okay.
they really are.
But the ECO doesn't require everything to be brick. It just has to meet certain, you know, it has, if all they've done is looked at brick, then it's gonna be really, really expensive. Has there been any,
Yeah, they priced it without brick and they estimated $540,000
well, not,
Yeah, but the price it was steel at that, right?
versus 800, right?
but did they?
Is there something in between?
Well,
Hardy
right,
plank
no,
allows?
but there could be some sort of a different veneer that doesn't have to be brick. I mean, you have to look at the guidelines and see what you can come up with.
And we
but-
could brick just the facing side too, that's an option. So the
That's
front,
true.
the
Right.
building that faces 258 is the
Yeah.
offices, which would be a nice facade anyway. So bricking that one side to 258 would be an option and still maintain the entrance corridor policies and ordinances.
I guess Bill brought up a good point. Does it have to be brick? Does it have to be all brick?
No, the
It's a
guidance-
brick face.
Yeah, the guidance we were given was to make, they wanted us to match the architectural style of the building that's already there. That was the guidance we were given when we talked about this initially.
So it can't be hardy plank?
That would,
Well, they could.
could if it got approved that way.
It could. And Mike builds these buildings all the time. He could, I mean, Mike, couldn't you foresee something that was, looks appropriate out there that's still not, that isn't 100% brick?
Well, even if you just had a brick skirt,
I mean, there's ways to do this
hardy
without,
plank or whatever material is acceptable in the historic district, I mean.
there's ways to do this without blowing that much money.
I think it's something we need to look at real hard.
All right, let's do this. Let's look at these projects just for some simplicity individually. So let's start with the bridge project. Amy's asking for another $93,000 to do the bridge. Accurate?
Yes.
Right? And that would redeck all of the bridges in Windsor Castle Park?
Not in full. It would attack the worst bridges first, Station and Jericho. Not all of the bridges need all of their walkboards redone, to be clear. So
It would replace
that's why we had to price it
all of
linear
the
foot.
boards that are damaged or deteriorated that are out there.
So we're not redoing the bridges, we're just replacing wood?
Yes, ma'am.
The decking.
Well, that's the way we'll proceed with it, because the top rails are in decent shape, as are the pickets that haven't been kicked out. Some pickets have been kicked out, but
Do
So,
we have an invoice from the contractor?
This is the bids. We received 2 bids on the project.
Do we see those?
you're seeing them in just a minute at Parks
They're
Committee
later
if
on
you
the
want to
agenda.
jump ahead, or I don't
Oh,
want to
okay.
disrupt the order.
my thought process on the bridges is that this is an amenity we have in town, not a potential amenity that gets tremendous use.
Daily.
We've talked about small town charm.
Yeah.
I know one other town, and it's called New York City, that's got a park in the middle of it. You know, I think we take care of it. I don't, you know, if it's another $93,000, you know,
I agree with you, Randy.
I
So be
agree.
it.
Agreed.
Are we good moving that forward?
I want to see the bids.
Okay, well, look them up. They're right here. They're in your parks. There it is. For restoration. You
Contract
have
award for Windsor Castle Boardwalk Restoration.
Athens Building Corporation, and then Hodges and Hodges, and Hodges are our original contractor on this.
Yeah, they're the ones that install the bridges in the park. And you see the, two prices aren't far off from each other at
No,
all.
$6,000 difference.
I'm
We
sorry,
trust it's accurate.
who installed the bridges?
Hodges and Hodges.
They were also the high bidder on this job.
They're also the ones that you said didn't use the right treated wood, so I don't know why we would even talk to them anymore.
Well, it was an order
was a
of
spec.
wood that the head contractor made. It wasn't Hodges and Hodges ordering the wood. So I'll just,
I use
Say that.
Hodges.
And they weren't in charge of like QA?
I
I
use
don't know
Hodges
if
and
you would
Hodges
know
all
it
the
wasn't
time. They're
treated
great.
appropriately.
Do you like them?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, they're really
I do.
skilled.
I'm just asking,
do,
if we
yeah.
say that we have to repair it because it wasn't right the first time, then why are we talking to them again?
I understand your point, yeah.
You can't tell wood's inferior always when you're installing it. Am I correct, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, what happens is you get a bad batch and you don't know it, the contractor doesn't know it.
Right.
He puts it down anyway, and then
looks
it
beautiful.
deteriorates much faster than the rest of it. It's just that whatever batch it came out of.
Yep.
If you save your paperwork, they'll give you some credit, but usually people don't do
So
that.
if they get credit, do we get credit?
That's really difficult to get.
Yeah.
Okay. It's worth a try.
Most of the companies are out of business.
Oh,
They
really?
sold it to us and they went out of business. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Does anybody have any experience with Athens?
No, they were new to all of us, including Kimberly Horn.
But they checked them out.
Yeah, they thoroughly vetted their references and sent those all to us, and they seemed like everybody that they work with, they were local government that they worked with, right, Michael? The references, so.
So I just, what am I missing? Because I see the memo from Kimberly Horn, but I don't know that I see the actual invoice. I'm not on the right place.
It's just a summary.
It's just a summary.
Oh.
I was under the impression that we were doing all the bridges, but, you know, I guess if we're just doing the
That-
needed,
That's my hope. I want to do Station and Jericho bridges in full and remove those rails on the side like I talked about. And then the other ones, we may have to attack by linear foot at first, but then eventually go to that model for all of them.
so we may have an additional expense.
Yes, and if that
for
needs to come out of
bridges.
operation, then I can budget for that, and I can work with the contractor to do it over so many years. Like, maybe we do a bridge a year, but this will definitely get us with all the trouble spots taken care of in this 1 year.
How many, I post pictures of the bridges every day that I walk.
Mm-hmm.
How many bridges do we have in the park?
5. Yeah, I'm getting the number 5, and then we have 3 piers.
And so this
Fishing
$316,000 will cover what percent?
So I don't know what the percentage was of bad boards, but Kimberly Horn went around with my park staff and they marked all boards that were going or close to a bad board or what have you. So they went around and marked them, and it was considerable. But mostly Station and Jericho had a heavier percentage of those. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a sun exposure or what.
Okay.
But if we allocated an additional 92,000, you could fix all the really bad stuff, is what
Yes.
you're saying? Just to
Yes.
simplify that, okay.
Some of them are really bad.
I know. I get pictures every day. I've got bridge spotters, and they send those to me, and I send the staff out. If we can't get to it, we cone it. And we have to screw the cones down so they don't get tossed into the river.
I guess for safety reasons, we don't really have a choice. And the park is very popular.
Okay. Let's move that to council. Next thing we're going to look at is let's look at the concession, the football field concessions and restrooms to start off with. Amy, you have $80,000 pledged to that project. How much additional money do you need for that?
I estimate it's gonna cost $200,000.
You estimate or the engineers estimate?
I estimate based on this, maintenance building.
I need a real estimate before I
Got
can
it.
do anything on that.
Okay.
I mean, we estimated $80,000 and now we need another 120, but you don't know that to be true. So until we get a real number on that, I can't move forward with that at all.
Okay.
Let's look at the maintenance building.
I have a question, can we back up?
Yeah,
a minute?
please, go ahead, Mike.
What are you spending on porta toilets?
What am I spending on what?
Porta toilets.
Porta Johns.
Porta Johns,
yeah.
oh. $300 a month
For
for 2
one.
seasons. Well, no, that's the 2 plus the hand wash station.
Okay.
So it's
Which is all
$300
that's
a
out
month.
there, right?
Hmm?
That's it. That's all that's out there.
Yeah.
It's actually not a bad price. So other than aesthetics, that's pretty cheap.
Well, yeah.
And how many are there?
There's 2 restrooms and 1 hand wash station. And I have them out there from now through November, and then again, starting in late March through June, or early June.
Is 2 enough for the crowds that are out there?
Probably not, but the bathrooms in the large concession are always open, and they're always available for people to use.
Okay, Mike,
I'm
I'm
just,
waiting.
you know, I know that they're expensive, you know, to me they are. I mean,
I know that they're cheap, but it's appearance of disparity out there, and we need to move forward with the concession stands and bathrooms.
Yes.
So I know we don't have the quote, but could we go forward with the bathroom part and do the concession later?
No, it's all one building.
It's in the one building.
Just build it all into one.
And I think that the comparison here, when we do that concession stand, we see what we already have out there. So I'm hoping that the new concession stand will be comparable to what's there.
Yes, I want it in the same split face block, the same roof line that has the entrance to it. So I have pictures, but it's probably not the meeting to show them. But if you want to see them, I have them.
I think what's important is the cost.
Okay. I will get a firm cost on that.
Would it be beneficial if we work with the engineers that are working on it now and have them provide us with some options so the council can visually see the options and then we can make a decision from there?
That would be
That'll
helpful.
help, yeah.
So that way, we're not just speculating, because they can look at different material options. I mean, you had some on the maintenance building. They have done some
Yeah.
renderings on the concession building.
Yep, this is that split face block that looks great, and good, windows all around it. It has a second floor, so they have a board meeting space. Smithfield Packers youth football. So I think it's great, and it looks a lot like the larger concession building, which I'd like all the buildings on that site to be cohesive and look similar.
To make sure why don't we move the bridge stuff forward? We'll work with the engineers and come back to the next work session and see if they can come and work through some options with us. Because ultimately, if it's anything outside the ECO guidelines, we will have to do a waiver from planning commission. So we'll have to determine if that's something we're gonna have to ask for, and if so, it needs to be something that council is comfortable with asking for. We
I
can
still
work-
want to look at a study for the whole property.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want to do is build 4 bathrooms in this cube structure and then we build I'm going to make this up, indoor volleyball place or a field hockey something next door to it and we needed 8 bathrooms instead of 4.
Well, any
then we're
auxiliary
like-
builds would need their own restrooms anyway. This is addressing a need that's already present and needed to be taken care of.
So there's not
It's no
other
harm
land in proximity that's going to have
You're not
to.
gonna underbuild this structure. It will serve the football field, because it's one field, and then if we do anything in addition, we'll just have to make sure bathrooms are at the forefront of any new build out there.
The other thing that I'll say is every board I'm on, we don't have a meeting space. Like we go to Smithfield
Right.
Station and meet, so I don't know that you have to have a second story just to have a meeting once a month.
Well, I
And-
think it will give the building interest and look similar to the building at the back of the complex. And this is at the front of it, so I want it to look great. And there's no harm in giving them space to meet.
No harm in it. And I guess if we have the money, then we can afford it. But my point is, every board I'm on, I don't have like a meeting space that we're given. But I get it.
All right, so we're going to bring back the concessions and maintenance buildings with some options with engineers and some real numbers? Okay. All right. Have we addressed what we need to address with the
Yes.
ARPA piece?
And then what I will do is at the council meeting, you'll have a resolution to reappropriate these funds with those additional funds for the bridge work. So that will be what you will have at the September council meeting for consideration.
Okay. Very good. All right, moving along, we have invoices in excess of $20,000 which require council authorization. Contact Industries, this is our mobile modular shoot house, $42,430. Chief, we've done a couple of things. Can you tell me what this is?
Yes, this mobile, it is a building that you can set up in any design of a home where our officers can actually get actual hands-on
Right,
training.
yep, we discussed this.
Yes, sir. It's actually, you can do one part
Right.
in theory, but this is actually seeing them execute what they have learned.
And we are in possession of this now?
We are waiting to make the purchase once the funds, once it's been approved.
Okay.
Randy, is that budgeted?
Yes.
And wasn't it covered by a grant?
It's covered by grant, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. All right, Western Tidewater Free Clinic, their budgeted contribution of $24,490 is here. Then Roanoke Engineering Sales, remove and replace a wall covering at the Smithfield Center for $50,000 we have here. And that's completed. I happen to notice in our spreadsheet, it was budgeted at $46,000. And the funds that we got before, any particular reason that they exceeded the budgeted amount?
So, because I went with a different type of material, I went with the vinyl instead of the grass cloth that had like a texture to it. When you stripped it, it left the glue behind, which is fine if you're going back to the same style, but because we're going with the smooth vinyl, it had to be totally stripped and primed and all of that, so it added another week of work.
And they didn't know that when they bid the job?
No. Because they even contacted the original installer and said, will we have any trouble? Will they need to be stripped? And he said, absolutely not. The glue will come right off. So it was a surprise to all of us.
Why are we paying that? If they gave us a bid and then they got into
Well,
work?
it actually came up to 10,000 and I agreed to pay 4 of it after we encountered it. Because they said, do you want to try to avoid stripping it and just get what you get? And I said, absolutely not.
Okay. All right. That takes care of all of our invoices. Any questions? Any further questions? All right, we'll send these to council for consideration. I have 2 other things come before Finance Committee today. Mr. Riddick, if you want to, we have notice of proposed real estate property tax increase. If you'll start with that one, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of council, in a year when there's a reassessment, you can't just adopt the tax rate when you adopt your budget. You have to have a public hearing. I've provided each of you a copy of the 2019 notice. There's a format that's required by law that being published in the newspaper. And then I provide you a copy of the ordinance whereby you adopted your rate. There was a big discussion about what's the rate going to be, 14 cents, 15 cents, 19 cents. Your consensus was 14 cents, but you still have to have a public hearing to adopt the rate. We've done this, there's been a lot of gnashing of teeth in the newspaper about how this hasn't been done yet, but that's just kind of ridiculous because we've done this in the past in September. We're not off schedule by any means, it's just the way it goes. So that's what we're gonna do. I'll have to get with Ms. Ross and do the math here. Ellen was really good at this. Have you ever done this? Probably not. Oh, you have? Okay, good. Because it's higher math than I can do, so I'm gonna turn that over to her. But we have to put this in the newspaper, and you'll have to have a public hearing. That would be at your October meeting. And then we have to publish this in the newspaper, and you can set the rate at anything you want to. It can be at 14, 19, anything you want to, but you have to have the public hearing. So that's what we're gonna do. And then the other item is, you've already voted to do this, but you have to take care of the housekeeping, and that has to do with the changing of fiscal year. The town's been on a calendar year, but you want to coincide with the county, and so in order to do that, you have to amend the code, and there's 2 provisions in the town code that, before it said the tax year was the calendar year. Now it's going to be July 1 to June 30th of every year. And then the taxes are going to be due and payable on June the 5th. and that coincides with due dates that for county taxes, or at least, they collect theirs twice a year. You're only gonna collect yours once a year. And then at the end of this, and y'all have to tell me what this is gonna be, but there's a transition period, because we're gonna bill for half a year. All right, so you're ready to send the bills out, correct, Laura?
They'll go out anywhere, ma'am.
Okay, you have to, what's the deadline gonna be? What's the new drop dead date, or that people have to pay
So they
without penalty?
are due June,
No, for this new,
the new one, September 15th.
September 15th. So we'll have to put September 15th in here.
So you have like 2 weeks to pay it?
Is that enough time? It's not enough time.
That's not enough time.
No. I don't think you can't
It's
send
not enough
bills
time.
out in too much, because the problem is gonna be, all these are gonna go to escrow accounts for people who have mortgages, and they're not gonna be used to getting them when they get them, and so there's not gonna be enough time for that to happen, and so you're gonna have a flood of inquiries about, well, I can't do this, and you're gonna have to waive the penalty. So my recommendation, you find a better date, a more extended date than September 15th.
I agree. How about a recommendation, Ms. Ross?
September 30th?
And they'll go out,
Any day.
Now.
So it gives people
so
a
it
month.
gives us September 1st, maybe people get their bills. Gives them 30 days.
My
I think you're
question-
still pushing it.
My question on that would be, if it's paid out of escrow through your mortgage anyway.
Yeah, but not everybody does that.
Okay, well, I do, so, we're just talking about me. So, let's just talk about me for a second. So,
For you.
okay. So, if it's paid through your mortgage, right, and you have this escrow account set up, and the mortgage company, to your point, isn't used to getting this kind of off-cycle bill, and they're like, oh, the bill usually comes, blah, blah, blah. Is that gonna cause the escrow amount to not be adequate for a
No.
person to cover
No.
what's being paid?
No, there'll be, because escrow accounts, for every month that goes by, you replace a month of your taxes. And so there should be an adequate amount of money in everybody's escrow account to pay the taxes when they're due.
So they're
Because if it were due in December, there would be 4 more months worth of taxes, but we're not billing for 4 months. We're only billing for the first 6 months. So
Yeah.
there's ample money there, because it's a one-time 6-month bill instead of a 12-month bill. So everybody's escrow accounts can be fine.
You see my point, I just don't want
I did.
them to come back and be like, oh, now your payment is,
My concern is not that. My concern is
Their efficiency in doing
their
it.
efficiency in processing.
That's what
it,
worries
and
me.
it's gonna all come back, and if we turn around and assess people with late fees on their escrow accounts, there's gonna be a lot of mad people.
So normally the bill is due when? Previously it was due when?
December 5th,
5th, and the bills were issued by,
I don't know.
this year when they didn't send them out
Well,
right?
the problem,
no,
yeah,
I'm not talking about that time.
but normally,
I mean, 45
Normally, we
days
try to
enough?
give at least a month. Normally.
Yeah.
A minimum of
At
30
least
days.
a month is the goal.
Yeah, I think though that, I,
45.
Yeah, we do October
I think
15th.
October 15th gives you 45 days,
Do that.
and that should fix the inefficiencies in the
and this is
mail and the
this is
banks.
just a one-time thing.
Right.
Right.
But you have to provide for the transition, and you have to give people a reasonable time
Right,
to deal with it.
agreed.
I think October 15th is
It
probably
sounds
better.
like we have October 15th.
Yeah.
All right. Your date, sir, is October
She's gonna
15th.
thank you very much, because if it's gonna be sooner than that, she's gonna be inundated with
Phone calls.
phone calls about late fees.
Yes.
Is this gonna affect the trash charge?
It'll be split.
So,
Explain that, it'll be split.
Well, we're billing for 6 months, so we'll bill for
I got
6 months of it.
I got
So
6
next-
months of the trash too?
Right, so next cycle,
It'll
they
be
will
12
call it
months.
back up.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not adding, I mean, nobody will pay any additional fees or anything like, it'll be for a 6 month window since the last billing. They'll be paying for what that 6 month window was.
And then they'll go to a year after that.
Right, so
Which
it'll
we've been
be
used to.
another, they won't get another bill until next June.
Well, the bills will go out next May with a June 5th due date.
Right.
Which coincides with what the county does.
So does this just say property tax? I mean, am I missing that, or does it
just
also
says-
cover the,
It says taxes because it's,
so it could also cover the trash? I just want to make sure we're not
just
leaving
says-
that part out.
it says unless otherwise specified, the town's tax year shall be a fiscal year.
So it doesn't say what kind of tax, which is good. Okay.
Taxes.
All right.
And we need to have a public hearing on this?
No, you do
No,
not.
we will
Because you
need
know, I
to,
said, the only time you have to have a public hearing on taxes is when you
Set a rate.
increase or decrease taxes. You can, this is the administrative part of it, so you can amend your ordinances anytime you want to.
and then we'll send this to council for consideration in September.
Correct, it'll be on your agenda next week.
Very good.
But we are having a public hearing for the tax rate.
That'll
Yes,
be in
but not till October.
But we had a public hearing for the budget. We didn't have a public hearing for the rate change.
That's correct.
Okay.
That'll be in October because we don't have time to
But
get
this
it
is
published.
once every 4-year kind of thing. So
Okay.
it's not, but we're not doing something we haven't done in the past. Everything is like it's supposed to be. It's just.
Everything's the same, just different.
Huh?
Everything's the same.
Everything's the same.
Okay.
All right. Anything else come before finance? Hearing none. We will close the finance committee.
Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, sorry, I'm pulling back up my agenda.
That's okay.
I'd like to open the Parks and Recreation Committee, members and myself as chair, Vice Mayor Butler, and Mr. Brooks. Looks like Amy, we're going to hear from Amy. Any more questions on the boardwalk restoration project? Do we know the timing for that, Amy? How long is it going to take?
I don't know the timing. That's when I need to meet with the contractor and figure out because I'd like to close the entire bridge for the work to happen. That way people stay safe. We had 2 large trees removed from the park a couple of weeks ago, and the contractor had a heck of a time keeping people out of the barriers. He said he'd never seen anything like it. They just would walk right through them, walk under them, you know, bringing their dogs through the work zone. It was bad.
But when the work is scheduled, we'll make sure it gets publicly.
Absolutely. Yeah, there'll be plenty of
Posted.
notice, and I won't do it near
Yes.
any festivals or any important events or things like that.
Okay, well, that's the only thing on the agenda, but have you filled your positions that you had open?
I did. I just had one for event manager. We have filled it. We made an offer. She accepted, but we're waiting for her to come on board and to give her notice to her previous employer. So we likely won't see her until October. But
And then I called you over the last month with regard to a county survey that I think I saw. Do you want to tell everyone else about that?
So, Isle of Wight County Parks is doing a master plan for all of their park properties, and they generously started to share information with us. And it will be, of course, extremely relevant to anything that we do because whatever the county has and sees as, you know, services that are already offered, we know we don't need to offer that in addition as a town parks department. So Michael Frickanese has been great in sharing information with me, and he'll continue to do that so we can pour through that and get the benefits of that.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
Great. Does anyone have any questions? Anything else for Amy? Thank you. I'll close the meeting.
Public Works.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to open up the Public Works Committee meeting along with Mr. Smith and Mrs. Roundtree. We only have one thing on our agenda, and that is going to be coming from Jack Reed, Mowing and Landscaping Services.
Yes, sir. At the Monday, July 24th Town Council Committee meeting, town staff presented the results of their request for proposal for mowing and landscaping services. The selection committee narrowed the selections down to Escape to Eden and Schultz Landscaping. Please keep in mind the current mowing landscaping contract will terminate September 1st, 2023, and we've asked that they will not be providing any extensions past that point. Staff recommends continued discussion on which firm would best fit, which firm would be the best fit for the town. For simple math, the difference between the two proposals is just over $22,000.
questions?
The reason that we saw this is because when the initial RFP went out, we had terms, and it's in your packet, about watering. And watering was quite a bit more expensive than anybody thought. And one of the RFP respondents, Schultz, provided that, and the other did not. And that's what created that initial giant discrepancy between the two. Escape to Eden has been doing our work now, and Schultz, as reference, has done Smithfield Foods and the surrounding pieces there. They're also the ones that had the watering in their initial price. Realizing it's more expensive, I still am in favor of Schultz. I think you get a better product, you get a professional crew, you get something that is done very, very well, and it's showcased here in town. So I would be in favor of upgrading our company to Schultz for this. That's why I asked you guys to table it, because I knew that there's some additional information coming out that we didn't have.
So did Escape to Eden add watering, or did Schultz take it out, or how are we comparing apples to apples now?
Escape to Eden removed watering from theirs as well. Part of the confusion was, part of the scope is written to essentially keep the plants alive for 90 days. And so they did have watering in there, it just wasn't broken out as a separate line item. And so they also reduced their overall price.
As is shown now, this is watering as needed on a per cost basis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this pricing that we see does not include watering, and there's a separate price to water.
You're talking about the Escape from Eden does not show water.
Neither one.
Neither one does.
Neither one does.
You're comparing apples to apples.
Yes,
right now.
these are
Or
fair comparisons.
Where last time we looked at it, Schultz had watering and Escape to Eden had a little bit.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's still $22,000.
Over 12 months, $2,200 a month.
Yeah.
If you're gonna accept a bid choose a bid that's higher, you've got to give a reason for doing that. And if what you're saying is that your current contractor, the quality of their work as compared to the other bidder for which you have immediate comparison adjacent to it is worth that much or is that much better, then there's a basis for doing it.
That's my
But
statement.
if it's, on a dollar-to-dollar basis, you're supposed to take the lower bid, but if it's because of the level and quality of service, you can differentiate.
We don't know what Schultz is gonna do for us once they start work. I mean, we know what their past is, but $23,000, that's $500 a week. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but we can't say they're better than Eden when they haven't never worked for us before. If they had a history with us in the past, we could compare that, but I don't see where we can compare it right now. Other than what we know their reputation is and what we know around it. And I do know they do good work.
Yeah.
But as far as what they're gonna do for the town, and what Eden is already doing,
Are we unhappy with Eden? I mean, do they not?
No, ma'am.
We're not.
Their performance is adequate. I mean, they've done fine.
Like scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best.
3.
3?
okay.
3.5.
Yeah, that would be the caveat I would say is I think that what they're doing is adequate. Do I think we can get better service? Yes. And I mean, that's exactly why we brought it to you guys for discussion and not just going low bid, because we thought there was room for improvement. And it's up to you guys, what willing to pay for the improved quality of service.
Have we gone back to them and said, look, scale of 1 to 5, you're a 3, you need to be at least a 4? How are we gonna, where are they faulting? What, do they know where they're faulting? Because if they don't know what's wrong, then they can't fix it.
Well,
And,
yeah.
business owners, I mean, I do that all the time.
I do have a concern. On Tuesday, August the 8th, they were mowing the median outside of O'Reilly's, and they didn't have up any highway safety signs. I mean, that's the stuff I see with these guys. I mean, the work is fine, but they're not following the letter of the law. I mean, if we're out there mowing, you're supposed to have signs up that say mowing ahead. This day they didn't. Had I noticed that before? No, but I also wasn't looking to see what our contractors were doing.
Now, Schultz does up at Surrey, don't they?
They do my property in Surrey,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Because I've been by there and it looks darn good.
I've been very impressed with their service, and that's why I'm sitting here being a champion for Schultz. I've seen the work they do, and it's great.
Yeah, but I think Jeff brings up a valid point. If Jack said we were okay with Eden, but if there are some areas in which they're short, and if we don't bring it to their attention, then they think they're doing a good job.
Part of, I guess, how we kind of rank contractors is you have some contractors you never have to speak to, and they do excellent job all the time. There's others that you have to speak to more often. That's kind of where my ranking comes from. If we find an issue and we present it to them, they address it. Some time will pass and we may find another issue and they'll address it. Others, often you don't have to say anything to them.
Anything.
Because they're proactive.
Correct.
So which one do you want us to pick? I mean, you have to work with them.
$22,000.
Yes, sir. Another question.
Is he not gonna answer?
When you do cite them on something or ask them to do something, is it repeated, the same thing over and over again?
Not generally, no.
Okay. So when they do correct whatever it is you've asked them to do, it does not get repeated again?
Not all.
Okay.
So we'll go back to Mrs. Roundtree's question.
This is the one time I didn't have a staff recommendation.
You're in the hot seat.
Well, I mean, you're the one that have to work with them, right?
That's
Correct. I honestly, I guess if I had to pick, and it's nothing against Escape to Eden, I think they've done a great job. I would lean towards Schultz, I guess, to council's vision of having the town be more aesthetically pleasing. And I think overall, council and the town will be happier with Schultz. And we give them a shot. We give them 12 months. If they don't perform, then we put it back out.
So they're worth $23,000 more.
Yes, ma'am.
So you don't have to get a call.
So I want to confirm, the town has never done business directly with Schultz. Is that to your knowledge?
We did during the Windsor Castle restoration project, because that was done independent of the town, so they selected all their own vendors, and Schultz was the landscape vendor. And the landscape around the manor house looks beautiful. We had trouble with boxwoods not taking up and growing, but it wasn't totally their fault. There's something in the soil there that prevents growth. But all the other, like butterfly bushes and all of that, they did good work.
Okay.
That was just landscaping, no mowing or anything like that.
So as a follow-up, are they gonna be ready for Friday? Because, I mean, what you say here is there will be no extensions, right? I got asked this today on the phone by somebody who wants me to recruit 5,000 physicians. They're like, can you start November 1st? I'm like, oh man, I gotta hire all these people to, call these doctors on the phone. So are they ready for September 1st? Because that's Friday.
They were going to be ready for August. We'll reach back out. I'm relatively certain they're watching, and they'll
Okay.
be as ready as they can be. And through the interview process, they were adamant about getting a lot of our sites kind of up to speed, and they asked for a pretty short time period of that, and we actually gave them an extended, like, look, we're not expecting miracles overnight, but we'll get them in gear pretty fast.
What was budgeted for this service?
We have to go back and look. It's in the.
Is it roughly the same?
It's more. I mean, this is more than.
This exceeds.
Yeah, it exceeds what's in the budget. And we'll go look.
Both quotes exceed the budget?
Both did, because Escape to Eden's price went up significantly from what their current price is.
Okay.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, when I was chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee, I was familiar with the going on at the Manor House, and I was familiar with all the landscaping that was done there. And I saw absolutely none but wonderful work there. So based on what I saw them do then, I'm kind of leaning toward Randy's recommendation with Schultz. I think it's worth the money.
Can we go back to Schultz and say, hey, you know, you're substantially higher? Anything you can do? Or have you already gone through that?
I mean, we've kind of already done that, and they did lower their price a little bit when we were having the discussion about the watering.
Right.
Their price is lower now than what their original bid was this time. But as far as what they were contracted to do the work with previously, they're substantially higher than that. So they did actually lower their price a little bit during that conversation.
And I'm certainly am not gonna tell people how to do their jobs, because that's your job, but I figured it would be worth asking. Well, based on what I've heard, it sounds like Schultz may be our front runner, and Lord knows I don't like spending money, especially when it's not my money. But if we really do want the aesthetics of what we really think we're gonna be getting, yeah, a one-year contract trial period, and then we reassess it in a year from now.
I agree.
Anybody else?
I still like to know what the budget was.
I'm trying to find
Is
it.
all of your contractual, though?
Sure, it's in our email.
At $265,000 is under Public Works.
Take that back, actually, a portion of this is paid through highway.
Yeah, I think it's split across funds, so it's gonna be hard for me to get you the exact number that's in the budget, because some of it's highway, some of it's general fund.
Okay.
Public. So we'll be able to put that, be able to tell you how far it exceeds what's currently
Okay.
appropriated, but I'm gonna have to go pull funds together.
Okay, I understand.
All right, Randy, I expect them to be a 5.
That's right. Tell them after 60 or 90 days, we want them to come to the committee meeting and come talk to us.
Jack, I expect them to be a 5.5.
All right, I guess we'll move this along then. I think Schultz is our recommendation at this point. Does anybody have anything else? With that, I will conclude our Public Works Committee meeting.
Please in order? No, it's the next one behind that. Okay, thanks, Mike. I'd like to open Public Buildings and Welfare with myself as chair, with Councilman Hall and Councilman Pack. The first thing is amendments to the town charter.
Yes, ma'am. Last month, I brought this to council as we do need to request a change in the town charter to change our elections. Currently, they are in here is in May. We need to move it to November. I went through and identified some other things that needed to be updated to bring us into compliance with how we're actually operating. Those changes were in here, and over the last month, I asked council to look and see if there was anything else that council would like to ask for a change to be made with. The only other thing that I know has been of any consideration is directly elected versus council-appointed mayor. That's the only thing I've heard council mention that there was even a desire to discuss. But if there's anything else, we can change it. The process is once council says, yes, here's what we want to change, I've already got Ms. Brewer's office spun up to be able to help us get this through, even though she may potentially not be our delegate when this session comes around. But her staff is geared up to help us get this to where it needs to be to get it in this session. But if there's other suggestions or possible changes council would like to see, I need those so we can make those changes in here. And if there's a discussion to be had on election of mayor or anything else, that's what I'm asking for, so I know what to take to Ms. Brewer's office.
When is your plan to take it to her office?
The sooner the better, because it has to be filed early so that legislative services can draft the actual bill. It has to be submitted near the beginning or at the beginning of the session. So ASAP is preferred. It will be on the council agenda to have council officially adopt a recommended change. So we will I'll put it on the September meeting, so if there's discussion that needs to happen, if somebody's not ready to talk about it now, we can have it then, but we need to do it soon.
Because the reason I asked that, you know, I've heard some conversations about the mayor's position too,
Right.
but I don't think that we've actually had an open discussion about that in
No.
any of our committee meetings.
We have.
That becomes really difficult, because then you would have a election for mayor and,
Election for council.
and election for council members, and they don't cross over.
Well, I know that.
I know, but that's, and we don't have a ward system here. We don't, everybody, you are all at large. You represent the whole time.
But the town of Windsor has an elected mayor.
They do?
Mhm.
They do.
Yes.
Yes.
And-
They've been more progressive than we are in
It was just
relationship
in the normal
to,
cycle.
yeah, in a relationship to their general elections. They've been doing November since when?
We did it 3 or 4 years before I came here.
And they also elect their mayor. Maybe not this go around, but I think it's something that, you know, we should discuss.
If we're changing the charter, it ought to be this go around.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't change this charter
We
very often.
generally
I don't know.
like
Okay.
you to-
Yeah.
Generally, you try to do very minimal ask of the General Assembly for
Okay.
charter changes.
So, I don't think I'm in favor of electing the mayor, and I like the way it's worked, but how does Windsor do it? I mean, do they, so you have, you know, 10, I don't know, maybe 2 candidates, 3 candidates to decide they want to run for mayor, and the others for the board, right?
Yes.
How long is the mayor's term?
'Same as council, 4 years.
So it's 4 years, so you'd have a mayoral election every 4 years.
Yes.
And I assume there's no requirements for it, anybody could run for mayor, I mean, you
Right.
get your signatures and whatever
Right.
else, but there's no experience.
Yes, you just had to get the signatures like everybody else, and then you were on that 4-year cycle. So, you know, as it is now, there's 4 one cycle and 3 the next. On that 4 cycle, one of them would be the mayor.
Right now, your mayor turns over every 2 years.
Yeah.
Or potentially 2, yeah,
Potentially.
is appointed every 2 years,
Correct.
so.
But that's definitely a discussion that council needs to have.
So in that case, you could be the mayor for 4 years if you were elected as mayor?
You would be.
You would be.
You would be. Yeah. And it wouldn't necessarily be and here's what I like about it, it's like, I like that that the 7 of us appoint our mayor, because we kind of know who we're working with, and we could rotate if we chose, you know, like the board of supervisor has an unofficial kind of rotation that they do. Also, if Jeff ran for mayor, and was unsuccessful, he would no longer be a part of council, and I like having part of council as one of us having that leadership role, because we know how it all works, and we know how we work together, and I would hate for Jeff to lose the mayor and then not have him on council, right? I mean, he's a valuable member of council, and no longer would be able to participate, and perhaps have somebody else here, and that somebody else may also be very good, but you don't know.
But the mayor really, by law and by your code and by the provisions of everything that governs the town, the mayor's, his power is not as great as one might imagine. It's to preside over meetings and to make appointments. And that's it. That's about all, that's the
The
only,
caveat I would add about Windsor is in Windsor, the mayor does not vote unless it's a tie. To where here, the mayor votes on every vote. The only time the mayor ever votes in Windsor is a tie.
Because he's a member of council.
Right, well, they're, right, because in Windsor, you're not, you are the mayor, you're not a councilman.
Well, one of the recommendations you're taking out of the charter, and I could not agree with you more, is that one of the mayor's powers and duties, as redlined, to be removed, is that in times of public danger or emergencies, he may take command of the police and maintain order and enforce laws, and for this purpose may deputize such assistant policemen as may be necessary. So if we follow this by the letter of the law, Steve Bowman could take over as police chief during a hurricane, and we could all become deputies. I don't think our mayor needs to do that.
That was
Steve
one
may
of
be the
the-
exception
Although
because
he's
he
qualified,
could.
right?
Steve may be one that's qualified, but not me. And if we ever had a power-hungry person on council, that would not be what I'd want to be in. So, nice job redlining that one. Jeez, oh, peace. That was a little scary to be in our charter.
I want to go back to the candidate forum that we had, and that question came up, and it was one of those that was thrown at us at the last minute, and I had to answer first. And I was like, repeat the question? And I said, I've never given it any thought. And Valerie was kind enough to say, Jeff, it's okay. We'll just move on. But I have given it thought, and I agree with what Randy's saying. I think I like the way we have it set up now. We know exactly who we're working with, and we collectively get to make a decision, and we don't have to convolute things. So that's just my 2 cents.
And we can change it every 2 years at each new election cycle. So if 3 incumbents were running, they all lost, and by 3 new people, for whatever reason, they have an opportunity to change the mayor, if so inclined.
It ain't broken, don't fix it.
I'm hearing different from the public. And that's what, I've got to speak it because I hear it.
Yeah. Share it, please.
They called me, told me about it, they said they feel like it should have been an elected mayor, not appointed by council. And that goes back to the good old boy system that she has pointed out in the past that seemed to exist at one time or didn't exist, but it allowed the public to still have a say-so in that position of the town. So that's what I'm hearing.
You mean back in the day, so they wanted to go back
Years ago,
to?
they used to elect the mayor in Smithfield.
In Smithfield?
So, well, the
Hadn't
highest
been-
vote
not
getter.
since,
I know it's been a long time ago, but I know it's been a long time.
It was the highest vote getter.
Highest vote getter,
highest
right?
vote getter,
Highest
yeah.
vote
Was the
getter
mayor.
as
It was
mayor.
changed when James Chapman ran because I didn't know that at that time.
Bill,
it hadn't been since,
I think you
well,
actually.
not in 30 years it hadn't been, because it's.
Well, I know, but I know it's been a long
did-
time.
that
'cause
came up.
I found a sheet,
Yeah.
believe it or not, in David's house in some paperwork, and
I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying
who was
that-
running for
I don't know.
council and mayors.
You're right, Mike, bringing that up. But I guess, where did that ever change in our
The last time the charter
charter?
was amended was 1982,
Okay,
and I became the town attorney in 1983.
okay, so you have.
1990,
so you haven't
1993,
seen it,
excuse me,
right.
93.
So it's a long time ago.
So it's been a long time.
And I get the idea that we all working together and we know, what we think is best, but we're just 6 other people. The town is, I know there's a big push for this transparency and trying to involve the public. So, how do you address that?
Well, it does say, the mayor shall have no other authority other than to preside at meetings.
Right.
You're not, you're basically a council member.
Yeah, so you elect a mayor, you're not really doing anything.
You're not elected anything.
He's running the meeting. Maybe he has a, moral sense of duty or obligation to show up at more ribbon cuttings or something, which I went today for you guys, thanks to the Hardy Elementary School, because everybody else was not everybody else was out of town, but Steve was out of town. But anyway, I don't like the top vote getter. I don't particularly like that one, just speaking of, our election when the 3 of us, it was, the 3 of us and Ms. Tynes. I think so 4 ran for 3 positions. And the 3 of us that are sitting here won, obviously, but I think I remember that I had the most votes out of the 3 of us, and I worked full-time. There's no way I could have been mayor, and I wouldn't have wanted to. And it was my first term. That's the other thing about...
My first term, I was a top vote getter. I had no position being mayor. I didn't know anything.
No
Well, I
clue.
definitely don't agree with that process. I think to continue to do it the way we're doing it, or the citizens elect it.
I think we need to keep doing it the way we've been doing it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Well, if you have time, look through and see if there's anything else as you read through this between now and the September council meeting, let me know and I'll get it in here, because it will be on the agenda at the September council meeting to endorse these changes so I can get it to the General Assembly.
The only other thing I see right now, Michael, is that aren't we talking about bulleting out a treasurer versus finance position?
When I went through that,
And in here, it says something about,
right, you guys appoint the treasurer as stated in here. Finance director would not be something appointed by
Okay.
town council, so that's
so we could
why-
add it and not have to change the charter.
Right, that would be under the,
That's the administrative section.
right.
It's not under the charter.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
And I guess he and councilman always just refers to he or she, right? That's no slight of gender, it's just the way it is.
So we're in agreement of changing, updating the amendment, basically to change our voting,
Right, what,
election from May to November.
that's the biggest one, and then going through and just pulling certain things out, you know, example is, in here, it says you can elect a representative to the school board.
Yeah, it does.
You know, that's not something
That we
you
do.
do. It also says in here that you guys will, like, certify the election results and things.
We
That's
don't
not
do
a
that
role
either.
council does. So I went through and pulled those things out that aren't today's practice. But the,
You don't have a town sergeant anymore either.
right, so it's really just updating it. The biggest change is the elections,
The election.
otherwise it's just modernizing some things in there.
Okay.
Did you compare this to anyone else's?
Everybody's
Township.
is a little different, and it all depends on when it was updated. An example, the one in Windsor still said we could close 460 if we wanted to. You know, so it's some of those things that have been around since when the town was, you know, in inception. And again, it's been 40 years since it was updated, but everybody's is different, has little quirks depending on the locality. That's all I
Okay.
have on that.
We'll hear from Tammy on a public hearing, special use permit, 111 Institute Street.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. The applicant is seeking approval to rent 111 Institute Street. This is an existing single-family residential dwelling. This would be as a short-term rental property. According to our zoning ordinance, Article 2Z1, short-term rentals as a primary principal use, they are permissible only after acquiring a special use permit. No changes to the property are proposed in order to accommodate this short-term rental. This application was favorably recommended to Town Council at the Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. This was under the condition that the Planning Commission would review this application after 1 year and then continue to review it every 2 years thereafter. The positives is it does provide additional accommodations in the heart of the historic district. The negatives, it is not a by right use and does require a special use permit. Approval should be conditioned on the applicants following the conditions outlined in Article 2Z1A through I, except for item B. These conditions do require a signed and notarized short-term rental affidavit ensuring compliance. For your convenience, these do follow the staff report. Thank you.
It's just like Airbnb.
Yes.
A permanent Airbnb.
That is the only use of that property. There's
Correct.
not a resident there.
Is that the, will that be the only Airbnb that we have in town that would be a permanent short-term?
No, there are two others. One is on Chalmers Road. I provided a
Okay.
map in the attachment.
I saw where the other ones were located.
And Chalmers Road and South Mason.
Now, the question that Mrs. Clary answered about the sex offender, I just thought about it. I don't really know how that would pertain to this property.
Wouldn't.
Because how would she know who, not she in particular, but how would we know who,
Right.
you know, is, so it really wouldn't pertain to the short-term rental.
And there's the
She would-
National Sex Offender Registry, so you can already go and publicly
Right.
see anybody.
But you don't know who.
But
But
no,
that's their
this
permanent residence.
You would
Yeah, you
only,
don't know who's
be
renting.
Right, this
concerned
would not, that would
with her
not cover
neighbors.
this.
Yeah, okay.
So we had some discussion of this at planning commission level, and it was, you know, we had some hypothetical discussions, some big picture stuff. Like, how many of these do we want to allow in town? What is okay with us? And we didn't come up with an answer. We didn't have one. All we knew is like, we're okay with where we are now. If you look like a community that's similar to us, like Cape Charles, they have a lot of them,
Yeah.
but it's a vacationing
Vacation.
community, right? So I guess this applicant here probably thinks that he's gonna get some vacationers in Smithfield. You know, so it's just a shift in us.
And it's a prime piece of property, it's right in the historic
Sure, it's a
district,
great
too.
spot. If I was looking to come to visit Smithfield for a while, that'd be a great spot for me to look at. Of course, Jeff and his neighbors live right next door, and they may feel uncomfortable with that. So there's got to be some give and take in that. And so far, it hasn't been an issue. But Virginia Beach, and Julia Hilligass sits on some planning in Virginia Beach, and they've had nightmare stories where people have rented VRBOs, and it's college kids or whoever, and they bring, you know, their entire fraternity, and they stay in this little tiny house, and it's a mess. So we have some protection in that we can't have more than 2 people per bedroom. I think this particular one has 5 bedrooms, so you can have more than 10 guests. But we don't really have a way to enforce that. I mean, we're not going to
People
call
lie.
chief and
Can
go,
I pause
hey.
you real quickly? Because in the application, he stated up to no more than 10. Is it truly a 5-bedroom house?
So the way that our ordinance reads is it's either 2, I believe it's 2 per bedroom, or 10, whichever's greater.
Okay, so that goes back to the question, how many bedrooms does he have?
I do not know how many bedrooms he has, but according to the ordinance, I believe it's less than 5, and so we went with the greater number of allowing 10 occupants.
Okay, I understand. All right, Randy, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, we didn't come to any resolve on this. We said, okay, we don't have any reason to say no to this. But we recognize that other cities and other communities have had issues. And so how do we want to handle this in the future? It wasn't as much about this application in particular as the bigger picture. And there are 2 in relative proximity. You know, I have a house on my street that a lady from Virginia Beach has bought as her own personal vacation home, which to me is really odd. I never thought of vacationing in Smithfield or having a second home in Smithfield. But maybe we're transitioning to that a little bit. I mean, certainly not full-fledged, but we are seeing a little bit more. It wasn't as much about this application specific, 'cause we didn't feel like this application specific had anything to go against, but we're like, we really need to keep our eyes and ears open and see how we want to address this, because there is potential in the future for this to have negative impact, and that's not our intention. And so we talked about whether maybe you have, how many you maybe allow 10 or 15, but all those numbers were hard to come up with, and we really didn't have an answer. But that's what our discussion was around this. But we did recommend this, and I think unanimously for recommendation for approval.
Wasn't there a recommendation that this be subject to review after 12 months?
Yeah.
Boy, we did get into that, didn't we?
Yeah.
We got into the weeds on that pretty good. This wasn't a forever.
No, the discussion was what happens if it goes bad, and you have a nightmare scenario, situation where people are misbehaving and not following the rules, and these are subject to revocation, and so we thought, the planning commission said, why not review this after 12 months to make sure everything is okay, and then every 2 months every 2 years
2
thereafter.
years.
Which, I think that was the recommendation, was it not?
Yes.
I remember that now, yes. That's exactly how it went. Because that allowed us to, if something went sideways in this, to pull the special use permit and not allow it to be this.
Right.
And the applicant, he doesn't have a whole lot of control over his guests. I mean, he has some, but, running a hotel, weird people check in sometime and do things that you don't want them to do, that you wish they didn't. I had a lamp thrown at me recently from the 3rd floor balcony. I wasn't in favor of that. So you can't always control it, and there will probably be, in the rental of this, a bad guest at some point, and hopefully it doesn't affect much. But if it becomes repetitive, then we had at least an opportunity to correct it, particularly if it started affecting neighbors.
I was just worried about the parking. It looks like there's plenty of parking at the site.
Ooh, there's some off-street parking with this too. I think they had 2 off-street parking.
Yeah.
Red.
Any more discussion or any questions of
Tamara, does this cause a big administrative burden? I've looked into Airbnbs like in Blacksburg, for example, right? And they have to calculate fees and taxes and pay them quarterly? Is that the same here?
That would be a treasurer
They have to
question.
pay transient occupancy.
Yeah, there is,
I think these guys are exempt from transient occupancy
Are they?
tax. I think so, because they are classified differently. They're overseeing agencies. We deal with the health department in the hotel business. And this is, there's an agency that's a little bit higher than that, that's not specific on that they have to, they amend to. It's a little bit less stringent.
But
So
they
you
do
see my
pay a-
question, like, these people are going into Airbnbs, and then, like, how many of them do we allow? Because then people aren't staying in the hotels, they're staying at Airbnb, and then do we miss out on the tax, the transient occupancy tax, which is why I think a lot of college towns have gone to where you do have a transient occupancy tax, and you have to report how many days it was rented, and then pay it quarterly to the town.
I thought we had a separate ordinance for, short-term rentals, licensing or something. I thought there was an additional step in order to run a short-term rental.
There are, let's see if I got it. There are,
In our affidavit that we have them sign, number 3 and number 4 deal with that. They're affirming that they would be liable and responsible for all taxes that may be owed, and they would also obtain a business license from the town as well.
Under the definition of transient occupancy tax in the town code, they would be liable. You know, I'll have to look and see if they're exempt for some reason by, I can't imagine they've been given exemption by the General Assembly, but if they have, that's a different issue. But it says, a tax is hereby imposed and levied on hotels, motels, boarding houses, travel campgrounds, and other facilities offering guest rooms rented out for continuous occupancy for fewer than 30 consecutive days.
Section E says all operators engaging in short-term rentals are required to obtain, maintain a business license, and the operator of the short-term rental shall remain liable for all taxes that may be owed in addition to the transient
There it is.
occupancy tax.
Yeah.
So again, does that
Okay.
create an administrative burden? Do we go after the short-term rentals for that tax? Or have we not done that before?
We would have to make sure we're doing.
Because as this,
Yeah.
you know, if this
It's-
becomes a
right.
bigger deal, that's why Blacksburg did it.
it's a self-report.
Sure.
Well, if it's run by a corporation like, well, VRBO and Airbnb and HomeAway, all these people now under one sort of umbrella. And if you rent through them and you manage it yourself, no matter who manages it, they're gonna take that money, they're gonna report that money to the locality. So you're gonna be responsible for it. You're gonna get a bill. I get one from Kill Level Hills. 'Cause
Yeah, but do we
if-
send bills
If I
in
rent
Smithfield?
through,
Because we have 2 right now, and no one's like admitting that we send those bills.
It's relatively new, we're gonna have to look at that, make sure.
Well,
that
all,
process
we don't,
works.
all those kind of, they're self-reporting, you have to
It's
tell.
self-report.
Yeah.
Smithfield is self-report
Yeah,
every,
yeah.
every quarter after report hotel occupancy and pay it.
So have we gone back to these 2 people that have the Airbnbs now and said, where's your self-report for your transient occupancy tax? That's my
We will-
question.
We will go back and look.
Okay.
yeah, and I agree with what Renee's saying. Next thing you know, you got 100 of them in town and I stay in hotels and whatever, so, you know.
I mean, I'm not saying I want to put a moratorium on solar
Right,
farms, you
right,
know, or whatever, like, you know. I'm not saying it's that big of an issue. I'm just saying, as it becomes more of an issue because it is popular.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you could rent out a short-term rental pretty good with the power outages and everything else.
So Randy, are you all gonna go back for further discussion on?
No, I don't
Just
think we
leave
have
it
further
as-
discussion. I think it was like, we really didn't get to an answer of where we wanted to be. We just like food for thought, and let's keep it in mind as we move forward with these and
Oh,
see
okay.
where we want to be. We're just kind of planting a seed with that.
I'm not opposed to it. I just want to look at if we're missing out on taxes.
You brought up Blacksburg a couple times, Renee, and to have a Airbnb in Blacksburg, you have to be a resident of the county. Like I could not buy a home in Blacksburg like I thought about doing and rent it out without being a resident of
interesting.
Montgomery County.
And I think currently in Isle of Wight County, for a short-term B&B, that the owners have to be at the property when they rent to a guest. And they're in the process of rewriting their
Really?
ordinance.
So you can only rent out a room?
So like a
You
bed and
cannot
breakfast.
rent
The
out
whole
the
home.
whole
Yeah, that's
facility.
weird.
That's what this is.
I wouldn't rent that.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I mean, the applicant here lives in Smithfield, his address is Smithfield. So that's not an issue. I just, my real comment on this is what I said it was. Let's just, not on this application specific, but as VRBO and these short-term rentals as a whole, let's just make sure we're making
The right
wise decisions as we move through with it. Like, I don't have any problem with this application. I voted in favor of it, and will continue to. I just know that it has potential. The whole process has potential. I don't want to put anything against this applicant.
And if you're a bad renter, you get a bad score. I mean, I rent Airbnbs all the time.
Yeah.
And so you attain a score, just like, you know, every Uber you've ever been in or whatever, you got a score. And so then people can choose not to rent to you.
Is there any more discussion about special use permit?
Yes.
Special use permit?
About this application?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna say what I'm thinking. I think we're setting a terrible precedent by allowing a permanent Airbnb or whatever you wanna call it here and now. And I think that's sort of echoing kind of what Randy's concerns are, is, you know, where does it stop? But, you know, you do have a prime piece of real estate. I walk by it every day. And it's not, I don't want to be labeled as the NIMBY guy again, not in my backyard, but I think we're really setting a precedent here, because once this one happens, and then someone else sees it happening, and then sees it happening, and we refuse one application later on down the line, well, you let him do it or her do it, why can't I do it? I don't like, this thing's got tentacles on it, and it bothers me, and I think we really need to discuss and come up with a master plan, I guess, let's call it that, rather than piecemeal it. And I was not aware prior to seeing the full report on this application that we had two already in the historic district.
So part of our thought process on that, Jeff, is what Bill just said, is that we said, okay, let's approve it and review it in 12 months. If we're not happy in 12 months, we revoke it, and then we review it every 2 years after. That was part of our process to help what we don't know may happen in the future. That's the thought of this, but just come up with a master plan and let us know.
All right?
And that's the problem, is we don't know how to be fair about it or what's appropriate. I don't think it's fair to say that we should have 10, and what if all 10 went on Grace Street? Well, that may be okay, but if they were scattered, I don't know how to do that. You know, and planning commission couldn't figure out what the appropriate way to do that was, what makes sense and is equitable and fair for all. It is a special use permit, and Bill pointed out to us, because we said, you know, if we had one on this corner and the next door neighbor says, oh, that's a great idea, I want to do one, we could say no.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
You know, because I think you're right. I think it is a slippery slope. Even though I know what the law says. I know that we can say no, but in trying to be fair and equitable, it is hard to say no to the next person.
Just having had a wedding in town, not mine obviously, but our oldest daughter in the last, year, there were really only two that were available, and Jesse's mother-in-law got the one on Chambers, however you say that. And then I had to rent another one that's, I can't even explain it, but it's in town somewhere. And then Smithfield Inn listed there the greenhouse at the back of the pergola. They listed that on Airbnb, which was interesting. So they actually had that listed as an Airbnb. Since then, they've taken it off because of fees.
My hotel rooms in Surrey, I rent on Airbnb, and they do very well for that. But we've listed our hotel rooms in Smithfield on the same sites, like our cottages and stuff, and they barely rented it all through that channel, anyhow.
But when we were doing the wedding, my point was there weren't enough places to put people between large, and we're saying we're like a wedding destination, because we do say that about ourselves. It was hard to find places to put everybody. I know in Cypress Creek specifically, our HOA does not allow it. So none of the 500 homes, once we're fully built out, 374 right now, can you Airbnb any of them? Or, by the way, have a family member stay with you longer than 3 months. So you can't just move the rest of the family in either.
That's a good rule.
Yeah.
Well, usually HOAs will dictate things like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it on that side of town, I guess.
And 55 plus, you can't have a minor living with you
That's
either.
right.
Yeah.
One more thing. This will be quick.
Is it dealing with
No,
this?
no, ma'am.
Okay, Mike wants to go
Oh, okay.
first.
No, well, go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
All right, all I have to do with, been talking to the mayor about this. Section 2-72 of the Code of the Town of Smithfield says that the rules of procedure for the Town of Smithfield's Town Council is the rules of the House of Delegates, and which make absolutely no sense. Nobody understands them. The clerk of the House of Delegates barely understands them. They're derived from Jefferson's rules,
It's true.
by which the Robert's Rules of Order are derived as well. And that's, Robert's Rules of Order are what most people understand. It's just the normal course. They're designed for everybody to have the ability to speak. You can make motions. Everybody understands you make a motion, it's seconded, there's discussion. Everybody's always understood that. Roddy Delk when he became the judge, he was the town attorney, and he said, Bill, here's the Robert's Rules of Order. This is what we go by. And I said, well, what about this house? Yeah, nobody does that. So what Steve and I were talking about this, we just need to change this and make this Robert's Rules of Orders, because that's what we do. That's what we've always done. It's the natural course of procedure for almost any meeting. And so that's what I would recommend that we do, because that's what we've been doing forever.
Because right now we're on the Dillon rule, right?
No, that's completely different, completely different.
Yeah.
The rules of procedure of the House of Delegates, and I've read them, and they're completely not useful or appropriate or functional for the town council of the town of Smithfield. So, unless you've got some objection, I'm gonna put an ordinance on the consent agenda to change, to do what we've always been doing, and it's kind of like the charter, we're cleaning up stuff.
So this will be submitted along with the charter?
No,
that is-
this will
That's
be
just us.
changed, this will be
Oh,
changed
okay.
next Tuesday night. You
Okay.
can just amend your ordinance.
And that bill, you know, we've had 2 substitute motions
Right.
made. And first off, Mike, I'm sorry that yours wasn't accepted when it was, because that's not what we knew, and I apologize for that. But I'll tell you this, I don't like substitute motions. I don't mind a motion getting voted down, but let's discuss the motion. If a motion's been made and seconded on the floor, let's vote on it. And it can go down, that's fine, that's fair. But I don't like the fact that there's a substitute motion made, because that really, to me, seems like, okay, there's a motion that's been seconded, there's a substitute motion. What's it take to say, well, I'm gonna make a substitute motion to that one, and you go
Well,
back and
there-
forth forever, that's
there will-
awful.
But you gotta have some rules, and.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
So does Robert's rules allow for that?
yes, it does.
It does allow for substitute
Yes,
motions?
it does.
Okay, all right, well, that doesn't,
But you got, but the rules of the House of Delegates are far more convoluted than that.
Yes, they are.
And the whole, if you read Robert's rules, the whole premise is, it's designed that everyone has the ability to speak. They have the opportunity to speak and debate, so that you can hash out whatever you're talking about. And that there's a method for doing that in a decorous way, so that everybody feels like that they've been treated fairly.
right.
And, you know, it's dependent on the mayor to continue to maintain control of things, but if you follow the rules, everybody's gonna get a fair shake.
See, Robert's rule still allows for substitute motions.
It does.
Interesting.
Well, and the problem with Mike's situation, and that was my fault, but the communication, you know, he was speaking from, it was,
Well, I
The
couldn't
whole-
hear, I couldn't hear
the
him
whole
either.
thing was, it was really unfortunate, because that's difficult when you're dealing with people from, on the telephone, and
Right.
it was, you know, maybe things would've been different if he was here, and we'll try to, be very
better with
careful
Jeff.
with Jeff next week when he's in Ireland, but that's, you know, that's not an easy thing to do when you're dealing with people, and you don't always hear everything everyone's saying.
So in theory, motion's made and seconded, and a substitute motion comes in. That would have to be seconded also, correct?
Correct.
Could that go on for eternity?
No, there's a limit on that. I mean, no.
I think it's three.
It's three, yeah. But there's a process, and Steve is good at it. He did this when he was at the
PMRC.
PMRC.
Much like Bill said, it hadn't happened in 30 years.
It has, nobody has ever offered a substitute motion since, I've been the town attorney
Now
since.
we've had two.
I've been the town attorney since April of 1993, and nobody has ever offered a substitute motion.
Two, but the same person.
Two, that's right.
Make
Mike
my name
likes
for
substitute
himself.
motions.
No, you're just helping us get stuff organized. Appreciate that information. Yeah, thank you.
He's got a new tool for us.
Is there any more discussion about items going to, I'd like to make a recommendation that the amendments to the town charter and the public hearing special use permit be forwarded to town council for a vote next week.
You
Okay.
can't
We'll
vote.
put that on action item,
No,
right?
it's gotta go action.
Action item,
Okay.
yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I had one thing, I know we've got, 3 more days left in this month, and, we're gonna be losing one of our better employees. This is back in the back there, and I wanted him to be recognized today, because I don't know whether he wants to come to any more meetings. But, he's done a great job for us. Wayne's been really, when I first came on, he pestered me for a while and drug me out in the field, in the heat, and in the cold, but I appreciated what he was doing. He was trying to let me know how things worked, and I felt better about what I was involved in, and I felt better about knowing what you guys do and how hard y'all work at trying to make a better community for us. I can't say enough, but thank you for what you've done for this town. I really do.
Wayne, you got anything you want to say?
No.
No, I really, again, I really appreciate everything that y'all have helped me with. Hopefully, as I mentioned last week, we had to get together and everything. I hope that I've helped you all out in so many different ways. I hope I've helped the residents out here in town, and hopefully the town is much better shape hopefully than it was when I first got here. And I hope that I've made it help and improved in that aspect. But I thank you all so much. I really do. You all have great to work with. I'm looking forward to retirement just to live my life.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
I didn't even see him sitting back there.
Wayne.
If there is no more discussions, the next scheduled meeting back here is gonna be Thursday, August 31st at 6:30. And it is my hope that, we can resolve some of the questions that the citizens have, as well as some of the questions that, we presented to Michael as well. And then our next meeting will be on September the 5th, town council meeting at 6:30 here. Additional items not listed on the committee but will be on council's upcoming agenda is the motion to approve the last town council summary minutes from August the 1st. If there is no additional, anything before us, then I adjourn this meeting.
All right, thank you.
Get that guy.
6 o'clock. 4 days.